administration's mind that many people hoped would be more lax when it came to regulation.
Especially when it comes to the biases of the model. I think one of the concerns that was raised during election time was just, whether the social media is left-leaning or right-leaning. And so with the models, it's the same thing all over again. I mean, these models are trained on data, and you want to make sure that, they are as neutral as possible, and just how the models are trained and what are their biases, and those sort of questions are still very relevant.
Yeah, a very good point, Mandeep. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for that. That is Mandeep Singh of Bloomberg Intelligence. Also, Figma reporting its first earnings report after the bell yesterday, moving on that. But the company's sales outlook failed to meet Wall Street's lofty expectations. The stock is up more than 100% since going public in July and is down 16.5% in the pre-market. Bloomberg's Bailey Lipschultz joins me now. Bailey, we were talking about yesterday about what a big test this was for Figma. So did it fail that test?
It failed the test, Danny. I think in Spider-Man they said with high stock prices come high expectations, maybe something like that.
Yes.
But really, when you see a stock that rallies like this, you have to beat expectations. That's what we spoke about yesterday morning. You have to beat and raise. We saw revenue relatively in line with what Wall Street was looking for, and this is Wall Street that modestly is kind of, or for the most part, is kind of a hold equivalent on the stock. So when you don't beat those expectations, you have profitability falling short. That's why you're seeing the stock down so sharply this morning. Again, we've seen a lot of these momentum IPOs pulling back from their recent highs. So Figma really the latest, but again, you can't miss your first print after going public.
So you go public, you miss your first print. Bailey, we also talked about this idea that maybe a test for the general IPO market. Does it give people pause that sure, you could get a 250% rally in your IPO, but you just steadily eat into that gain, especially if you can't show up with your earnings?
There's a lot of kind of debate around the current IPO environment. When you look at how these deals are being priced, when you look at how they're trading on day one, I think many bankers and investors would say 250% is not really what they want to see. It's a lot of momentum. There is a retail trader aspect at play with that kind of dynamic. The goal and kind of what we're going to see next week with a number of these deals pricing and debuting is, are we going to see banks push on price? Are we going to see kind of more modest opens? Are we going to see stocks that are up 20, 30, 40% and not 100 or 200%? Because most people would agree that's not really good for anyone.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're a shareholder who bought an IPO and you're still up.
You have to sell.
And sold, or you're still up 100%. So that's not too bad. Thank you so much for joining Bloomberg's Bailey Lipschultz. All right, a quick check on futures. We're about 20 minutes away from the open, and we continue to gain. Some of those gains starting to peter out. A lot of mixed jobs data coming in. How do you handle that? How do you incorporate it? We still are within 1% away from all-time highs, even though we are a little changed in this morning's pre-market session. And coming up, we're going to talk about this morning's data on the labor market, some of it pointing to cooling, some of it pointing to steady jobless claims. We're going to break it down and what it means for the Fed next. You're watching Bloomberg Open Interest.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and you can ask questions in the chat. We are not doing the simulcast on X Spaces today. So please ask questions or give me your opinion about some of the news that we're going to be covering. What's very important for the markets today, the legal aspects to the tariffs, because one of the federal judges struck down some of the provisions of the tariff policy. Trump stated that he was going to take it to the Supreme Court, so we still have uncertainty with that. So that's going to cause some turmoil in the markets. In addition, the Federal Reserve is supposed to do their rate cut this month. So a lot of investors are waiting for that actual move. So we have jobs data that came in. We have the tariff question at the federal court level. So there's going to be some movement in the markets. in the next couple weeks or so. It's important to keep in mind that the resistance level for the S&P 500 is still at 6,500. Right? The futures market is trading at 6,462 right now. We are doing this stream on September 4th, and I will replay it on all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please subscribe to all the channels that I have. I do all these videos for free so you can understand what's going on in the news, what's going on in the markets, my opinion on how to trade the markets within the context of the news cycle. So please help support the work that I do. You can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel. I don't put stuff behind a paywall. All these videos that I do covering the news are for free. Also pay attention to some of the new lecture series that I'm doing on the channels dealing with foreign policy and bioweapon. So take a look at that. That's really interesting. It goes into more of a what's the architecture for foreign policy. So please help support the work that I do by donating, by subscribing to the channels, sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me. Again, I do all this for free. If you pay attention to what I have to say in the video, I also tell you how to improve your health. Right? You can slow down the aging process. This is a protocol that I have been doing for a very long time. It works. It works because of the way it's stacked and continuity. So if you listen to what I have to say and you do what I tell you to do, you will improve your health. So please help support the work by getting the great products that I offer. With that, let's transition over to Bloomberg. They're talking about the job data. The initial jobless claims highest since June.
Us. Mike, a lot of jobs data coming in over the past 48 hours. What do you make of it?
Well, it's basically telling the same story, the same narrative, Danny, that the Fed has been looking at and that people on Wall Street have been talking about for a while. The companies are not hiring, but they're not firing too many either. 237 is still a very low number in terms of jobless claims, but only 54,000 jobs created in the private sector, according to ADP last month. We'll see how that plays out when we get the non-farm payrolls number from the government tomorrow. Continuing claims fall, 1,940,000. That's 4,000 lower than they were the previous month. So it doesn't suggest a labor market in free fall. Might also note the trade balance widened, kind of expected, but it did show a big pull forward of imports during the month of July, and it suggests that people were again trying to get ahead of tariffs.
Then you also get that Challengers job report, which has the weakest hiring plans for August on record. Mike, how does this set us up for tomorrow's non-farm payrolls?
Well, basically, we're looking at not much gain, 75,000. That is not a real firm estimate, I think, for people on Wall Street. They're willing to concede that we could go either way. We could see a strong report. We could see a weak report. And a lot of that may have to do with seasonal factors. But it's definitely a situation where people are expecting some weakness as the economy slows down. We also, of course, Danny, want to look at the revisions and see what we get after that 258,000 revision last month.
We will be looking at it, and the White House will be looking at it. Mike, speaking of the White House, you're down in Washington, D.C., and Stephen Myron, in about 45 minutes' time, is going to be starting his confirmation hearing to see if the White House, which they want to do, can get him on the FOMC before this month's decision. What does the timeline and road ahead look like that for it to happen, Mike?
Well, it looks like it could happen because Republicans basically in the Senate will do whatever Donald Trump wants. It's not easy to do the way their calendar works, but it certainly could happen. Now, Myron is going to be questioned today by Democrats in particular over his stance on Fed independence. In his opening remarks, Myron pledges to use his economic background to make decisions, not his political background, saying the most important job of the central bank is to prevent depressions and hyperinflations. Independence of monetary policy is a critical element for its success. My opinions and decisions will be based on my analysis of the macroeconomy.
They all
and
say
what's
that.
best for its long-term stewardship. However,
Do you think that they're going to be able to be confirmed if they say they're going to make all their decisions based on political persuasions?
Which would inject politics into the Fed. He also says the president should be able to fire any Fed official at will, also political, and he looks for a major turnover of the Fed staff because the president can do that. So there'll be a lot of sharp questions about whether he's going to be too political for the job, but the Republicans have already indicated that he's not.
Mike, really looking forward to your coverage of that hearing. Again, takes off in about 45 minutes' time. Bloomberg's Michael McKee in Washington. And again, he'll be there the next hour from Capitol Hill. Stephen Myron will be testifying before the Senate Banking Committee. All right, let's check on futures. Just 10 minutes away from the opening bell. We are within 1% of all-time highs, but we're a little changed on the S&P and NASDAQ. They're looking to push for a second day of gains. Outperformance from small caps after they tumbled yesterday. Getting help from this bond market, where the range yesterday was 11 basis points for the 10-year yield, jumping around quite a bit, but ending lower and pushing lower, again supporting some of the equities this morning. Speaking of getting jumpy, coming up next, investors apparently getting jumpy about Fed independence. That's the latest report from...
We're going to go to Palantir being interviewed, the co-founder being interviewed on CNBC. Before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps. I have 4 different types. I have the charcoal tea tree, the lemongrass, and peppermint. And the last one, lavender. Get a few bars for your household. Very high quality structural nano silver soaps. It'll help to support the work that I do and also help to support your health and wellness. It's also important for you to start preparing for the fall and winter season. I suspect that it's going to be problematic. So if you listen to me very carefully in between the sentences that I mentioned, maybe you'll start understanding what you need to do to prepare. But the fall and the winter probably are going to be problematic. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps because it cleans your skin. And it's made from structural nano silver. Another really important thing that you should get and be prepared for the fall or the winter is lozenges and drops. Elderberry zinc. You get 21 lozenges in each bag. Get a few bags for your household. The lozenges are larger than the drops. And by mitigating that irritation right away, you're circumventing a further problem down the road. Now, I also have the drops, which are smaller. You can get them in 100 count, very high quality. Get the drops. You can get it in honey and lemon, cherry flavor, and also in blueberry. Get a few bags for your household or for work. You never know when you're going to have that irritation, and take it right away and mitigate the problem. Very important to be prepared for this for the fall and the winter season. Please go to my store, use discount 5, get $5 off any order. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Tech and politics. We're joined right now on set by Joe Lonsdale, Palantir's co-founder and 8VC founding partner. There's about 100 things that we could talk about. I actually want to start here. This is where I'm going to start, but there's 100 places we're going to go. A lot of the tech leaders are going to the White House today to meet with the president later. The president has taken a very somewhat aggressive approach as it relates to taking stakes in businesses, Intel, taking potentially revenue from an NVIDIA or an AMD. And I'm curious how you, as historically a conservative to some degree, or a libertarian, thinks about that.
Yeah, you know, what he did, I guess, with Intel is there was a CHIPS Act that was giving him a lot of money, had a lot of strings attached. Some of the strings didn't make sense. and giving them money anyway. Why not take a stake? It's very weird, of course, for the government to be taking a stake in something. It's also a little bit weird for me for government to be, giving $9 billion to a company too. It's cronyism in some form, right? So someone who's very concerned with liberty, if the government's giving money anyway, maybe it should get a better deal. It's not totally unreasonable.
It's cronyism with a capital C when you give it to them. It's cronyism with a small c if you get a stake in the company.
It feels that's my.
It's just less.
The whole thing's very weird.
It's less bad.
That's my impression.
And do you see this though? I mean, he's talked about how this is the beginning of something. I mean, this is not the end state. He would like to the extent that the U.S. government could buy either other stakes or get other stakes, that he would like to do that. What do you think about it?
Well, the government should not be a controlling shareholder in any of our important companies.
Should it be a 10% shareholder and quiet and not?
If people are getting money from the government to do something, which in this case is clearly a national strategic goal, national security goal and strategic, it makes sense to at least get something back for it for the taxpayers, and maybe they sell it over time. They probably shouldn't be involved in governance, but it makes sense to be giving money for national security to companies to get something.
But isn't that what the taxpayer is supposed to be getting back, the national security piece? Isn't that technically, in a sort of a free market world, to the extent that there is a subsidy or that there's some effort being made by the government, the return is supposed to be either more resilient supply chains, better national security, but those aren't necessarily stakes in the businesses, because at least the way I think about it is once you have a stake in the business, all of a sudden you actually have a real interest in whatever happens to them in the future. So, for example, if there were two companies that were going to merge, that historically maybe regulators would say, no, we don't want these companies merging for the purpose of the consumer. But all of a sudden you actually have a stake in the business. Maybe now actually the merger makes more sense.
There's a million examples.
Right? We can go down the line of one.
I think they should have a stake in it, but up to a certain level. Maybe 10% is the level. Maybe 10% is too much. I'm on the fence on board governance, and it should be companies where they're offering a dividend. Therefore, the taxpayers are getting a dividend to help support the offset of the money that was put into the business. And you sell, hopefully, at some sort of capital appreciation. Now, the question is, should they be on the board or not? Should there be some sort of board governance? If it's for national security or strategic reasons, then there must be some sort of behind the board level, not at the board level, but behind the scenes, dialogue of what the government wants with the company. Now the question is how many of these companies will fall under this umbrella? We are moving towards a war footing with China. This is very reminiscent of what was happening with FDR. And certain industries were basically taken under the umbrella of the government for the war effort. So this isn't our normal capitalistic system. But we are moving towards a war footing where these technologies are so important for the high-tech warfare that we have that they can't fail. They're too big to fail. So having a stake in it probably makes sense. Now the question is what about the banking industry? Should the banking industry be partially owned by the government if they need a bailout? What I think what happens is that if they're too big to fail and the government has to come in and bail them out, having shares gives the board a reason to do proper governance. So they don't need a government bailout, especially at the banking industry. They'll be more prudent, they'll be more cognizant of their risks and have better risk management. And so in theory, if other technology, other companies or other sectors do not want government intrusion and a government bailout that will lead to some sort of corporate governance and some sort of share control, then they will be more prudent with their managing of the business. Now, Intel really messed up in terms of not investing in its technology and moving towards GPUs while they were just so focused on CPUs. They were too, I would say, too conservative or too ingrained with the old computer architecture, thinking that they were the dominant player and that no one was going to come in and eat their lunch. I think they made the same mistake as something similar to what was happening with Texas Instruments. Texas Instruments was a major semiconductor company. And then all of a sudden it fell behind with the Japanese and the Taiwanese. So if the United States doesn't start to help get our key industries back in shape and profitable, that it's going to affect our national security. So the United States coming in and buying, well, under Trump, they didn't buy anything, that he just received it. But the whole point here is that the United States under Biden, with the CHIP Act, gave money to Intel. Well, Intel felt that they didn't need to really move forward with any expedience with building factories. And they were slow to doing it. And there were cost overruns and all this. So having the government involved and pushing, either officially at the board level or behind the scenes, most likely will cattle prod Intel in moving forward with their fabs, their fabrication facilities. So, but I'm on the fence on should they be on the board or should they not be? I think the government probably should have a board position. Probably should have a board position, but there needs to be some sort of sunset. But what's happening with the landscape here is we're starting to see large corporations needing bailouts from the government. Now, when the government bails out, that's American taxpaying dollars, or the erosion of our dollar through inflation by printing debt to be able to bail out these industries. Either way, the American citizen is paying, either indirectly through inflation or directly through taxation. So it makes sense that having some, if there's going to be a bailout for these companies, it makes sense that the American taxpayer gets some sort of dividend and some sort of a capital appreciation when they sell, when the government sells its position. I think that's fair. The question is, how much do you go? You don't want it to be state run. You don't want to be state owned. We don't want communism. And this is a slippery slope. So there has to be guardrails to make sure that this doesn't teeter on state ownership. Okay, the markets are open. The S&P 500 is trading at 6,454. There's a resistance at 6,500, support level at 6,250. VIX is trading at 16. Euro is trading at 116. Oil, $63.15 a barrel. Bitcoin is trading at 111,000. BITO is trading at 1910. Japanese yen is 148.44, and natural gas is trading at 3.089. All right, let's continue with CNBC.
When the government, even if they're a non-voting member, but if they have a direct interest in the business, it fundamentally shifts.
They want it to fail. So.
It may be that the government, by the way, has to think about who are they going to use as their supplier. Are you going to use the company that has the best product at the best price, or are you going to use the company that actually you have a stake in?
No, and listen, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and others have taken stakes in other ways. The Fed's taking stakes in bonds. I think it's very uncomfortable for me to have the government buying things. I think the goal should be, it's a failure when the government has to help them buy into something, but if it's giving it money anyway to temporarily take a stake, maybe take the money back as soon as possible, get out of it, as you say, there's good reasons why you don't want to involve. There's no reasons not to take something if you're going to spend it for national
But
security.
his whole playbook is not conservative or liberal. I don't know what it is. It's like it's a whole new. I mean, all the populist stuff that's there. Doing tariffs were never.
Okay, so that's what I was going to go next. Let's talk tariffs. Where do you land on what's happening here?
You know, after World War II, America was completely dominant, and we let a lot of companies around the world, a lot of countries around the world get away with a lot of nonsense, right? There have been a lot of rules. There still are a lot of rules. If I want to go and do business in Japan, if I want to go and do business in certain European countries.
Other countries are using tariffs against us, so why don't we use the same thing on them? Secondly, there are 3 ways to get government revenue: taxation, issuing bonds, so there's a debt, they're issuing debt, right, to get cash flows in. Let me rephrase, not revenue, let me rephrase cash flows, right? That's the proper term. For the government to get cash flows, positive cash flows, it needs to issue debt and or tax and or tariff. So if you tariff, then you're reducing, if all variables are left unchanged, then you're reducing your debt issuance and or your taxation. If you don't have the tariffs, then your taxes are going to go up and or your debt issuance. That's your choices. You don't have any other choice than that. So tariffs are actually part of the portfolio of inflows for government revenues. And not only that, because we're moving towards a war footing against China, we're going to need that as a strategic tool geopolitically to get individuals to move their supply chains back to the United States and to get our allies in line as we march closer and closer to war with China. So tariffs is a good idea.
For certain industries, and because of that, it's been very unfair. We kind of allowed that. They needed the help as they were growing back again from nothing. At this point, it's unfair for them to be screwing over America. He's right to use something to try to renegotiate that and to get rid of their trade barrier.
Well, what do you think about, for example, India? You know, we put the tariff rate at 50% in India. Is that good? In terms of now you see the president or the prime minister of India hanging out with Putin and the Chinese. Maybe he was already doing that.
You had all the evil villains together last week.
All right. Breaking news: legendary Italian fashion designer Giorgio Armani dies at 91. Back to the markets, because the markets never sleep.
Well, yeah, I don't think Modi's an evil villain necessarily, but you had a lot of bad guys in China there, Putin and everyone. Listen, he's using it as a negotiation tactic to try to set things to be more fair. India has very, very unfair rules against U.S. trade. The right way to negotiate that is something that if the president gets to do it, you have to see if he succeeds in doing it or not. And right now it hasn't worked so far, but maybe he has something else.
Okay, we can try and set the example for the rest of the world in terms of free and fair trade. You only do it, you can only get screwed for so long. Right? I mean,
that's the point, and you have to use some kind of tools to negotiate.
it's nice to be the world, the leader of the world, and all these things. But if
says that you don't have these tools that you are now.
Right.
The Supreme Court could, I mean, the late 70s seemed to give the president this power with the law that we put in place. The lower courts are trying to stop it. It hasn't been used as much, but this is something we're going to find out from the Supreme Court, obviously. So obviously they have the right to stop it if they decide.
What do you make of we were talking with Heyman Capital earlier about this, but China and the idea of selling. Do you believe that NVIDIA should be selling these chips to China or not?
I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of giving China access to our best chips. I obviously do a lot in defense, and they're clearly an adversary that's using these things to develop stuff that we're going to have to potentially fight. So I hate that. There could be some theory that we don't want them to develop their own chip industry. We want to block it somehow. So there could be like higher level
Do you believe the sort of platform idea that if we can be the global platform and NVIDIA is the global platform effectively, that then you push out Huawei as a platform?
It does seem very important to try to compete against their platform all around the world and to try to undermine them as best we can. So what's the right answer to that? I don't have the data on that.
You support the administration, you support Trump. You support 70% of what's going on? Is it the 51%?
That's not how it works, Joe. I
know, but you know what I'm saying. You gotta look the other way on certain things.
I have a lot of friends in this administration doing amazing work that I admire, and this is a bold administration. I love how we just struck the Venezuela cartels. It's something I've wanted to do for years, and it doesn't mean I have to agree with everything they do. It doesn't mean that I'm in the know on everything they do. I don't know what the strategy is for everything.
And some of it you could be wrong on certain things that you're against, and it might actually end up. Everybody could be wrong.
That's a free country. Is we have different views and we disagree on things.
Joe, right before you sat down, we were reading some headlines. Elon Musk's not attending this AI meeting at the White House tonight. Do you know why?
I haven't asked him in particular, but I know he's extremely busy trying to build his businesses and hire talent. It's an insane war for talent right now in Silicon Valley. I know he's spending a lot of time on
it. Because we weren't sure if he was invited or not invited.
They didn't tell me if he was invited or not. I do know he's doing amazing work right now out in Palo Alto trying to build his companies. And it's a very intense time to build.
We're going to run out of time. Not Musk. I was going to say Meta versus OpenAI and this talent. You talk about talent war and the amount of money being spent. Who wins that? And do you think that some of these big paydays are actually going to work out in favor of the company buying?
You know, the way we built Palantir and Anapar and my companies is we actually had lower than average salaries and high upsides. So like everyone who I convinced to come work with me at Palantir, and it was really hard to convince them sometimes, like there's thousands of multimillionaires now because they have the upside. And I think they also worked harder because of that. I'm very skeptical of these like $100 million cash to come to my company. It's not a tech that's worked in the past, so we'll see if it works now. But I think it's going to be the new company for people where everyone owns them. It's actually going to beat all of these guys.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. This is a dual-purpose supplement that will help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Super important to bring down inflammation, and olive leaf extract helps your lipid profile. So it's going to bring down LDL levels and help to increase your HDL levels. By doing that, you're reducing plaque formation. So please go to my store and get the olive leaf extract. Take it every day. Help with your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. Super important to take. And if you notice, many of the vitamins and supplements and the way I'm stacking it give you dual functionality. So you're targeting multiple systems. And this is part of the reason why stacking is so important. There's no one supplement that is going to do everything for you. But when you stack it, you're mirroring almost what is going on with your biochemistry. The biochemistry has lots of feedback loops and complex, and it's different intermediaries of chemicals that allow for the cell to perform. So the biochemistry is pretty amazing if you look at a biochemistry map of a particular process, especially at the macro level of how the cell works. And then you look at the feedback loops for the immune system or the endocrine system, and it's pretty phenomenal. The human body is a very complex system. So it's important to stack and take supplements that have dual purpose, because you'll get these added benefits, and plus your cost benefit ratio is much better. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Pay attention to the way I tell you to stack these supplements and take the olive leaf extract. It's going to help your immune system and your cardiovascular system. In addition, detoxifying your body is super important, preferably every day. Now, drink filtered water, make sure you stay away from processed foods, and take zeolite. Zeolite will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals, including PFAS, forever chemicals, that will once it binds, it'll allow you to urinate within 6 to 8 hours. So you should be detoxifying your body daily. Now, how do you do that? You take 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. But also make sure that you clean your environment at home and stay away from exogenous exposures. Chemicals around your home, in the garage, in the basement, in the cupboards. Get rid of the stuff you don't need. Now, if there are cleaning agents that you do need, put them in sealed containers, preferably double layered, or wrap it with a garbage bag and then put it in a sealed container. And that way you're reducing the degassing of these cleaning agents or paints. So, and that way you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system, because over time, even at a small concentrational exposure, over time it builds up and causes disruption with the immune system and the endocrine system. So you want to clean your environment. That's a really important feature. Drink filtered water, stay away from processed foods, and detox with zeolite. Now, if you want a heavier detox, take 10 small drops underneath your tongue, swallow the filtered water, and do that every day until the bottle's done. Do that once or twice a year. But it's preferable to take 3 small drops, drink the filtered water, and do that every day. But it's up to you. But I recommend the daily detox. It stacks really well with gladiator barley and heirloom barley. Why? Because those barleys detoxify your body too. So the more ways that you detoxify your body, the better off you're going to be. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get healthy. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. So a great stack to help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system is the olive leaf extract. And to detoxify your body and help with your immune system and your endocrine system, take the zeolite. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Very solid with low middle income and higher middle income consumers, and even high income. So we define that as 50 to 100,000 in household income, or even 100 to 150,000 household income. We're also seeing growth in younger consumers under 50 years old, which is great for us.
So with that, because there's a lot of questions as to when retailers report, is this something of a moment of economic stress? If you are seeing that down trading, does it to you indicate greater economic stress?
Perhaps. And we do see that in the way customers are behaving, and our concern for customers as we enter the back half of the year that perhaps that pressure will intensify. In our business, we see customers shopping more intensely for consumable product, consumer staples, products they need. They're shopping close to need, which is an indicator that the consumer is under some stress.
Well, businesses under stress too, trying to figure out how to navigate tariffs. I think as the start of this year, something like 20% of your products were imports. Just the day-to-day of doing business with things like de minimis tariffs ending, confusion over what absolute levels are. How difficult is it to put a price tag on an item right now?
It's challenging, but our business model is very fluid and flexible. So we're in a great position. We can make a decision not to buy an item if we can't offer the right price to the consumer, and we can buy something else. Our customer doesn't have an expectation that we'll have anything in particular in stock on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. That gives us the flexibility to just not buy it, not import it, if we can't achieve the right price and the right markup, ultimately to make us profitable.
Given that, again, you're just so known for value and discounts, does that mean that you are avoiding at all costs trying to raise prices, or are you doing that on the margin?
We are avoiding at all costs to raise prices, but we are a price follower, and we maintain price gaps to the market. We're fiercely committed to making sure we are the absolute best price in the market. It will continue to do that. Again, we can substitute items in even categories to ensure that we are the best price in the market and not necessarily follow the market in price increases.
On your earnings call, you also talked about this idea that bankruptcies and store closures that are happening right now are a big benefit to you too, because you can look into expanding into these spaces. Just the level that you're seeing at the moment? If we compare it to other moments of stress, I mean, the most recent of one being COVID, how does it stack up with these retailers that are closing, and again, advantages you're seeing there?
Sure, yeah, it's a great moment for us. 43 years of business for Ollie's, and there's always been enough closeouts in the market for us to be able to feel the demand of our consumers. In this moment, it's bankruptcies and it's tariff-related uncertainty that's created even more closeouts. When you look at the market share opportunity for share of wallet with all the different companies that have closed, gone bankrupt, or closed stores, tremendous opportunity. It's also an opportunity to pick up people, human capital, people who are without jobs, and hire them into our new stores. We accelerated growth this year, opening 85 stores on top of 50 last year. Was an opportunity for us to hire more people and provide tremendous value to that many more communities across the country.
I would say, Eric, I also think part of the reason it's so fascinating to be in your seat right now with a really iconic American brand started in the 1980s is that for so many brands closely tied to this country, you're seeing a real interest from the online community and from the president, be it calling out the Cracker Barrel change of logo or Sydney Sweeney selling jeans for American Eagle, which I'm going to assume you're not hiring any actresses to sell all these bargain brands. But how do you think about just approaching the public when it does seem like there is this greater awareness, again, be it from the White House or online, with what companies are doing?
Sure. Ollie is actually one of our founders. He's a real person, and his image is all throughout our stores. It's a very quirky, kind of funny, friendly brand, approachable. And Ollie is one of our founders, is a kind of funny looking older man, and we love him, and our customers love him, and we lean into him, and have no plans to make any changes in terms of our iconography and our brand personality.
But again, when you think about changes, do you have in the back of your head potentially that this could have an audience of the White House? Does that factor into decision making at all?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not. No, we find it maybe humorous to talk about, but it's not really factoring into decisions that we make.
Hey,
our
Eric,
customers give us feedback on Ollie. They love Ollie.
Well, just quickly on the customers, you don't want to raise prices. You can be really flexible. I just wonder what levers you're looking at pulling right now to deal with some of the tariffs on items that you do want. How are those conversations working with suppliers and elsewhere?
Sure. Our suppliers are great partners, and we have a tremendous buying acumen to work with them.
I'm going to switch over to CNBC on their take of the labor market growth slows dramatically in August.
I'm upgrading to a big girl bed, which means it's time to invest in a good quality mattress. That's why I went with Saba. After taking their mattress quiz, I went with the memory foam hybrid. It's the perfect balance of...
Here we go. It's time for the August ADP payroll report. Steve Leisman's here. Steve.
Thank you. It's up 15. Yes, it is. 54,000 ADP, the private payroll company, estimating that private payrolls around the country rose by 54,000. That is against an estimate of 75,000. So a little bit under. Good sector, 13. Interesting number there. Services, 42. Not so strong. But there's the non-farm payroll estimate. 75 for both government and the private sector for Friday. So we'll see if there's an adjustment. It's in and around. Small business, okay, up 12,000 relative to the total there. Medium up 25, and large business up 18. It's been large businesses leading the way, so it's interesting to see small business catching up here. But this is where it gets interesting. Leisure and hospitality, we've seen that up 50, construction up 16. And I really just want to go right to the education and health services, which is, by our estimate, the 5th month in a row we've seen this decline. That had been a perennial stalwart source of job growth, not anymore. And there's trade, transportation, and utilities down 17. I'm interested in that because the tariffs might be reducing some of the goods flow, and we'll see what happens, whether or not that leads to layoffs in that sector. Job stayers up 4.4% in terms of their wages. So that's pretty good. And my talk with Waller yesterday suggested that, as long as wages remain okay, then you've got pretty good demand in the job. But I'll just tell you before we get to our fantastic guest that we have here, Neil Richardson, yesterday's Facebook was a real eye-opener for me. Really a weak report. It wasn't quite the report we've seen ahead of recessions, but it was spoke of an economy that's really at stall speed right now. There was no hiring going on, no growth, very limited consumer spending. y'all should go read the first 2 pages of that. It was really,
First time anybody's ever told me that.
what's that?
That's the first time anybody's ever told me to go read the first 2 pages of the beige book.
Well, I'm saving you reading the 80 pages of it.
But the first 2 pages lay out an
They
economy.
lay out an economy that starts with little economic activity. 4 districts had modest growth. And then the Challenger report this morning, layoffs up 39%, adding pharmaceuticals and finance to the sectors that we're seeing layoffs. So
Steve, have you seen it?
I ended up with more concern about the economy after yesterday's data and this morning's challenge.
Is there anything to notion that the falling participation rate is masking a much higher
It could
unemployment?
be. Yes, it could. Yes, it
What,
could.
what would it be if you put everything back in and you take the same
Did you just
participation?
talk to Kyle Bass?
No,
Because I ran into him outside and
We just had him on the show.
But he didn't give you that number?
no,
He says it's closer to 5%. I have not personally calculated it, but he says it would be quite a bit higher.
no, I didn't talk to him. But I have a brain, sort of, and a heart.
You don't have
Okay, I can think of these things on myself, right,
I
Neil?
perfectly believe you can.
Neela Richardson is here. She is the ADP chief economist. Neela, does this report that you've seen with ADP play into what Steve was just talking about? Does this describe an economy that's in stall speed as far as the data you see?
No, I think it's been in stasis for about a year now. But we have to look at the broader context. This is an economy that was kind of whipsawed by the Great Resignation. A lot of people are pretty happy where they are and they're staying put. So
Happy where they are at work or happy where they are unemployed?
employed. But also this is, firm behavior, employer behavior has changed quite a bit since the pandemic, and you can see it in the hours worked. Right now, average hours is about 2 hours less a week, according to ADP payroll data, than it was before the pandemic. That's consistent with a hiring pattern where you're keeping people on payroll, but they're working fewer hours. Before you cut a job, you'll cut an hour. And so what we're seeing is maybe an underemployed worker as opposed to an unemployed worker, which is a meaningful difference. It's also easier to add hours when things pick up. So the flexibility we're seeing now is in hours worked, not just in growing and shrinking your headcount. That's new.
That's really interesting. What Steve pointed to, this idea of education and health services suddenly being a weaker sector after years and years of being this powerhouse. What's happening there?
There's a lot of things happening in healthcare. Whether it is labor shortages, we're seeing that. We're seeing an aging demographic take root in that industry. So if you look at the average age of nurses and doctors and healthcare aides, it's going up. You're seeing that retiree segment, tenure shorten because people are leaving the field post-pandemic. Immigration is going to have a huge factor in a sector like healthcare or construction. Those are supply issues.
So the demand's still there, but they can't find workers for those.
So part of it is supply, part of it is having the dollars to hire. A lot of that sector is built in on grant money. If that grant money dries up in education and healthcare, you can't hire in the same way that you may have been able to.
For education aides, along those for aides in the classroom.
Yeah, aides or postdocs in universities. So all of this is playing out into a weaker education and healthcare number that we've been tracking for quite a while. This is not new for ADP payroll data. It is a distinction with the BLS data. We have seen weaker healthcare growth for the better part of the year.
Is that an argument for the Fed cut rates, or do you think they're late?
I think they have a muddled decision. I've been attending Jackson Hole with Steve for the past few years, and what's been clear to me in that evolution of the discussion there is that being a central banker is harder now than it's ever been. There's no clear-cut, easy choices, regardless where you are in the world, because you're dealing with all of these mega trends, from AI disruptions to a cautious consumer that is muscling through price increases and higher price levels, but is still cautious about it. And then you have AI disruptions and aging workforce. So all of this is making monetary policy difficult to do. There's no clear answers, even going into the next FOMC.
Becky, I just want a minute here. There was a little footnote in Governor Waller's speech in which he talked about getting ADP data and watching it closely and drawing a lot of his conclusions over what's happening in the job market from ADP. And I want to give you some data here because Year to date, ADP is reporting 587,000 jobs with only a couple of little revisions. The government's reporting 597,000 jobs with massive revisions. Over a 12-month period, ADP and the BLS, the difference is 82,000. So my point is that this data series has
early
done,
and it's right and
it's
better
done
than
a,
government numbers.
I don't know how to make money with it. That's the problem, because the mousetrap that you want to invent is the one that predicts the wrong number that will be reported by the BLS. This doesn't do that. So if somebody out there knows how to make money with a more accurate number, I don't know how to do that, but I just know if you want an idea of what's going on in the job market, I don't think you can afford to miss this data. I'm not saying it's the be all and end all. It's 20%. It's actual data, not estimate. But we track it, and it's at one of the lowest right now differences over a 3-month absolute average that we've seen in quite a while. I just want people to be aware of that. And again, I don't know how to trade on it, but it's good data.
What's the secret to building wealth? Well, people think it's about stick.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this stack. It's the foundation of the protocol. Now, taking a good multivitamin and a probiotic as a foundation to build off of, to slow down the aging process, is really important. I have the complete multivitamin. This is very easy to digest, and it has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity so your cells are performing properly. Take it every day, drink it with filtered water. It has the multivitamins that you need on a daily basis, and you build off of that. Now, taking a good probiotic is super important. Now, I have the MB40 probiotic, and also this one is the VeggieCap version. I also have a powdered version of the probiotic. Take either one, but take it every day. It's important, and stack it with the multivitamin. And by doing that, you're building a very strong foundation to slowing down the aging process, boosting up your immune system, and helping your other bodily systems, including your endocrine system and brain function and metabolism. So taking a good probiotic like the MB40 probiotic will help to improve your digestion, improve your immune system, improve your skin, improve your metabolism, help with brain function, it helps to get rid of the brain fog. You'll be able to sleep better. You'll be able to consolidate memory. And over time, you're going to actually notice that you have more vitality. So it's really important to take a good probiotic. Start at the gut. It's really important. Make sure you drink filtered water and eat properly. It's a holistic approach. Proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation, doing resistance training, doing cardio and stretching and balancing exercises, all very important. Learning new things, having some spirituality in your life, or mindfulness. These are all positive for your overall health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the MB40 probiotic or the powdered version, and stack it with the complete multivitamin. And that's a very strong foundation that we're going to build off of by adding other supplements. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you spend if you spend $100, you get a free gift until supplies last. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Okay. Now, let's listen to GOP divided following RFK Jr.'s CDC shakeup.
So you've noticed things are actually working because there's no more complex siloed IT tools or hours spent on repetitive.
So in just over an hour from now, HHS Secretary RFK Jr. is set to testify before the Senate to defend his signature Maha agenda.
And he's ready for this fight. Chad Pergram is live from the Capitol. Chad, this is going to be wild, right?
Good morning, guys. Yes, and it depends on who you talk to. Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. is either bolstering or tearing down public health agencies. There's a big shakeup at the CDC, especially after he fired Director Susan Menares. But Maha supporters say Kennedy is exactly what the country needs.
Secretary Kennedy is going to go in there today, talk about that choice for the American people of status quo versus reform, and talk about the most successful healthcare and food policy reform efforts that have happened in modern American history that he and President Trump have executed over the first year of Maha.
In a Wall Street Journal op-ed, Kennedy wrote that his mission is to restore trust in public health agencies, especially after what he termed irrational policies during the pandemic. But Democrats believe Kennedy is breaking the Hippocratic Oath and doing harm.
What RFK Jr. is dangerous. The damage RFK Jr. is causing right now will be felt for generations. If Donald Trump should fire RFK Jr. immediately, Senate Republicans should come out of hiding and demand Trump fire RFK too.
Watch Senate Health Committee Chairman Bill Cassidy at the hearing today. He had reservations about Kennedy. Most Republicans support the secretary, but even those who voted to confirm Kennedy are not pleased and have questions.
I met with Bobby in my office. I told him, I said, your job number one is to restore the confidence of the American people in the institution of public health in America.
No,
So far, he hasn't done.
No. His job one is to make sure that the policies of the CDC, the FDA, and HHS are making the population in the United States healthier. That's job one. Now, by doing that, you're going to gain confidence. But by just gaining confidence with previous dogma is not the right policy. So I totally disagree with what. No, job one isn't gaining the confidence of the American people. Job one is actually making sure that people are healthier. Sometimes you have to tell people that the way your life is, the way you're conducting your life is wrong in terms of health outcomes. He's wrong. He's wrong with that.
Now the hearing comes as Florida aims to scrap vaccine mandates for kids. The hearing was scheduled before Kennedy fired the CDC director and issued controversial guidelines for the COVID vaccine. Guys, back to you.
Well, it looks like both sides are ready. Thanks so much, Chad. And I think with this debate, he's going to be black. It's going to start, I think, about 10 o'clock.
And think about it. Big Pharma has a lot to lose under this shakeup. And Big Pharma has a big lobbying group. So senators and congressmen and women, they're going to be getting an earful from the lobbying group, Big Pharma lobbying group. So where is their real heart? Is it really on making Americans healthier, or is it just making sure the corporate profits are good? Now, I'm all for what RFK Jr. is doing. He's doing the right thing. He needs to completely shake up the CDC. It's corrupt, absolutely corrupt. All right. Let's see. All right, let's listen into MSNBC. This is Steve Ratner talking about why people are unhappy. Maybe it's their Cheerios.
I paid for my own college, so I knew I'd have to start accumulating a lot of money, paying student loans, paying rent if there wasn't much left over every month.
Let's talk about a tale of two economies. We talked about it in the Biden era, where we kept talking about how the numbers looked so great for the U.S. economy compared to the rest of the world, and yet a lot of people hurting in Middle America, a lot of people hurting across the country, and a lot of Americans pessimistic. That helped defeat Kamala Harris. How has that changed, or are they still pessimistic?
They're still pessimistic, and let me start with a poll that you guys referred to last week, which prompted me to try to lay out for you what lies behind that poll. But this was a poll by the Wall Street Journal and NORC. People like me have a good chance of improving our standard of living. And you can see the percentage that agree with that statement, who think they have a good chance of improving their standard of living, has dropped all the way down here to 25%. You can see back here in 1987, it was up around 75%. It bounced around, it bounced around. It did start coming down after the financial crisis, no question about that. This break here was COVID when they didn't take the survey. But you can see that COVID really changed people's perceptions. And now you've got only 25% of the people who believe this. Another poll found that 70% of Americans believe that there was never an American dream and that they're ever unlikely to realize it. But why do people feel that way? There is some reality and facts behind this sentiment, and that's what I want to show you now. This is the growth in real personal income, meaning how much money did people make after you adjust for inflation, so sort of everything puts on an apples-to-apples basis. If you go back to 1980, you can see that over this period of time, the average personal income grew by 1.3% a year. That may not sound like a lot, but that's after inflation, and when you compound it, it can be. And we had lots of ups and downs, as you can see in these light blue bars, but that's what we did. And then after the financial crisis, that dropped to 1.0%.
In 2008.
Around that period of time, in 2008, exactly. And, again, that may not sound like a lot, but that's almost a 30% drop. But then look what happened after COVID. It dropped all the way to minus 0.2, meaning the average family after inflation was losing ground. Yes, a lot of that was around 2020 and COVID, but even post-COVID, you can see how small these blue bars are. It's barely growing at all. And so if you want to know why people are unhappy, you just kind of have to look at their pocketbooks.
So Steve, they're also unhappy as we move to your second chart because it's just so expensive to buy a home. Extraordinary statistics in here over the years about the age of people buying their first homes. Used to be late 20s, these days it's late 30s.
Yeah, so you saw a couple days ago Donald Trump talking about declaring a national housing emergency. Nobody knows what that means or what it would lead him to do. But the point is that he recognizes that the housing problem is very central to people's feeling of unhappiness and of going backwards rather than forwards. So let's look at what's happened to house prices. So if you go back again to 1990, you can see the average house price was about 3 times the income of the average American. This is the period right before the financial crisis. We'll all remember house prices ran up almost to 5. But then after that, house prices came down. But now they've been going back up again, and they're up to almost 5 times. So the affordability has gone from 3 times your income to now 5 times your income, what you have to pay for a house. This is mostly driven by simply inflation and house prices. House prices have been going up faster than other things, and it's made housing unaffordable. And as you then alluded to, Willie, it has changed who can buy a house. So for first-time house buyers back in 1980, 29-year-olds were able to, on average, buy their first house. Today it's 38-year-olds, and that obviously does not make people happy either, to say the least. For all buyers, it's gone up a lot from 31 to 56. For repeat buyers, it's up to 61 compared to 36 back in 1980. And so housing has become out of the reach of many, many Americans, and that's also weighing very heavily on their feelings of well-being.
Absolutely. And one more shift in a negative direction, Steve Ratner, is upward mobility. Tell us about it.
Yeah, look, the dream of every American is for their kids to do better than they do. And that's not what's been happening. If you go all the way back to 1940, the silent generation, 90% of kids did better than their parents. That has been going down very, very, very steadily, all the way through boomers, through Gen X, and now through millennials, to the point where only about 40% of millennials are doing better than their parents. Why is this? It's mostly because as an economy grows more slowly, and our economy is growing more slowly, it's harder and harder for people to get ahead. And so if we want to fix this problem, we need to get the economy growing faster. And then a related point is what kind of wealth people have when they're 35 years old. So the average millennial compared to the average boomer, I'm a boomer, has 30% less wealth than the average boomer. And so this generation of millennials, who are now the people who are coming into prominence in politics and business and whatever, are on average less well off. But what's even more amazing in a way than that is you have growing wealth inequality among this group. We talk a lot about income inequality at different levels. This is wealth inequality. And so the fact is the top 10% millennial compared to the top 10% boomer is 20% better off, which means the people further down are even worse off than this minus 30%. So you've got this huge wealth inequality among millennials, which is driven in large part by the fact that boomers did do well. And the wealth transfer that's going on now from boomers to millennials is the largest in history, but it's only going to a sliver of millennials, this sliver, and the rest of them are doing this badly or worse.
You know, Mike Barnacle,
Thank you, Steve Ratner.
Thank you, Steve Ratner. Greatly appreciate it. Morning Joe, economic analyst.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver toothpaste. No fluoride. It whitens your teeth, freshens your breath, helps reduce inflammation at the gum line, and improves your gum line health. So get a few tubes of the structural nano silver toothpaste. It's very high quality. It's the best toothpaste that you're going to get. Get a few tubes for your household. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. High quality product. Another very important supplement to take to boost up your immune system is cleanse. It's 30 parts per million and max 35. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, swish in your mouth, gargle, maybe 20 seconds or 30 seconds, and then swallow it. What that's going to do is help with the mucosal lining. It's going to improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx and help with the epithelial lining. When you do that, you're boosting up your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the cleanse or the max 35, take it every day. It's the first pillar of the core protocol. Remember, the foundation, the multivitamin with the probiotic. The first pillar, the max 35 or cleanse. Second pillar, C60. Third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. That will boost up that immune system. And the fourth pillar, boomer boost. Rev up those energy levels and metabolism. When you do that, stack. That's very powerful for slowing down the aging process. And you're boosting up your immune system, you're helping with your endocrine system, you're helping with brain function, you're helping with energy levels, you're soaking up free radicals, you're bringing down inflammation. Super important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Time that all of this is litigated, but if she is, then the president can't appoint a replacement right away, and he's going to have to wait, as everyone else is, until this all plays out. So we're a few days away from knowing what's going to happen on that score, Paul, but I don't think we're going to see a lot of opposition here on Capitol Hill unless the markets tell their senators that they should be scared.
All right, Michael McKee, thank you so much. Our international economics and policy correspondent, Michael McKee. And just a reminder, if you hear some background noise here, it's because Paul and I are live at Bloomberg Power Players New York. This is a Bloomberg Live event. We're talking about the business of sports, which is a multi-trillion-dollar global industry, and we're bringing you influential voices from the business behind sports to help you identify what's next. So I'm thrilled to welcome Angela Ruggiero. She is co-founder at Sports Innovation Lab, executive board at World Rugby and at International Olympic Committee. And of course, you might well know her as a gold medalist, a four-time Olympian, a former ice hockey defense woman. Angela, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
This is not your first time around at Power Players. What does this event mean to you and the growth of women's sports?
Yeah, love getting in the room with smart people, with data, with understanding what the trends are. I think it's behooves everyone to just stay in the know of what's happening. This event does that. Women's sports is one of the probably major trends that I think everyone's going to be talking about today. I couldn't give two shits about this. All right, let's go to something that's a little bit more important. Let's get analysis on the jobs data shows continued weakness. 50 basis point rate cut perhaps might be predicted here.
To help us set up the trading day, we welcome in Kevin Hicks, as always, co-host of Fast Market Live from the CBOE in Chicago. Okay, we don't pay much attention usually to the ADP, but it's just become so critical as another piece of evidence in just how the market is assessing the cadence of this slowdown in the labor market. And obviously, because Powell did suggest at Jackson Hole that they are paying very close attention more so to that side of the dual mandate with the downside risks to the jobs market. So what are your takeaways this morning, Kevin? Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to Data Dump Thursday, Sam, is what we got here. A lot of information and a lot of it on the labor market. So let's go through. From early this morning, Challenger job cut, corporate layoffs up from 62,000 to almost 86,000 jobs. Higher corporate layoffs. Then 7:15, 8:15 Eastern time, we got ADP, private payrolls, lower than expected, 54,000, lower than the 68,000 expected, much lower than last month's 104,000. Then at 8:30 Eastern time, we got jobless claims, ticking a bit higher, 237,000. Remember, they were drifting higher. They broke that trend last week when they dipped down to 229,000, now back up to 237,000. So 3 data points so far this morning, all indicating a weaker labor market. And now we've got 10-year yields below 4.2%, Sam. So yes, if you're looking at the odds for a September rate cut coming up here in about 13 days, the odds are high and going higher.
Yeah, the rate cut bets are no doubt ramping up off the back of that data, no doubt confirmation that we are seeing a slowdown in the labor market. And yes, to your point, I mean, futures high, yields backing off. How much of this, when you tie it all together, all these data points are adding in the jobs as we got yesterday, what does this offer as a prelude now to the NFP?
Yeah, I think when we look at the non-farm payroll number and the unemployment number and wages, that's the number one data point of the month. So all these data points that we've gotten, jolts you mentioned was lighter than expected. The 3 data points we got today, those are all the precursor for the big number that we're going to get with non-farm payrolls. And could that change? Here's the question now, Sam. It's not necessarily of a 25 basis point cut and what are the odds. Now you're going to start talking about, if tomorrow's number comes in weak, you're going to start talking what's going to jump up on the radar screen is a 50 basis point cut. If this unemployment rate, remember, it almost hit 4.3% a month ago when it went from 4.1 to 4.2, but it was really 4.248. So it was almost 4.3. The expectations are for that to jump up there. What's going to start drifting into some of the discussions is a bigger rate cut in September. That's what I'm watching for. It looks like right now 25 basis points is pretty much locked in. Now the discussion, because the market always wants more, as you know, Sam, the discussion's going to keep going.
That's right. I mean, it's not a question of when, it's just how much now, as you say, and no doubt the NFP print is going to be key here as to, as you say, pressing in right now for 25, but there have been some voices calling to go harder sooner very much to get ahead of any further weakness there. So that's going to be interesting. But what's also going to be very telling is what the Fed is thinking about some of these tariffs and the rest of the other side of the dual mandate. And now we're seeing Trump is trying to get things to move quickly with regards to this ruling. What are the consequences there? I mean, how should one be watching this?
Well, the great discussion topic, the great master's thesis that's going to come down the road is going to be, are tariffs inflationary or are they a tax? And it looks like so far that people see, depending on what side of that discussion you're on, do you think they're inflationary? And if so, is it a one-off inflationary bump, or is this the tax and something that could actually is helping to slow down the U.S. economy? That's the polarizing look. Jerome Powell clearly thinks that they have the chance to be inflationary. That's why he's paused so far on rate hikes. That's why he's come out with commentary talking about that. Other players, other people in the Fed, like Christopher Waller, like Michelle Bowman, they've come out talking that it's not inflationary and we should be cutting rates. And now that it looks like Jerome Powell's focus has moved from inflation back to the labor market, it looks like he's starting to turn towards looking at the labor market and then leaning towards rate cuts, like he alluded to in Jackson Hole's speech. So I think the tariffs, and remember, the Trump administration is now fast tracking to the Supreme Court whether they're legal. And remember, people don't overreact to this idea, because if in a small percentage that they're deemed illegal, there's just 3, 4, 5 other avenues that the Trump administration can take. So I don't think this is as big of a deal as the overall look and the interest rate question. That's what stocks are I think, rising off of. They see not only lower interest rates, but more interest rate cuts coming. Stocks love that, as you know, Sam.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they certainly seem to have got used to these markets, the degree of uncertainty, particularly around the tariff news. But, as September looks like pretty much a done deal, whether it's 25 or 50, the big next question is going to be, whether one and done or what we get for the rest of the year as well. Just wondering, Trump keeping busy at the White House, also going to be hosting a number of tech CEOs today. What are your thoughts about that? Because, I've seen this actually play out in China. It was actually earlier this year, and it was like a game of Guess Who. Trading desks across Asia were sort of trying to look at the back of everybody's head and try to figure out which CEO belonged to which company. In that room is Xi Jinping. I know this is a very different story, but it just reminds me of that, Kevin. But what are the implications of this?
Well, I think when you see a high-profile shindig like they're having tonight at the White House, you want to see who's there, because you want to see who's in line with the administration, who's not in line. Rumors are that Elon Musk is not going to be there. Now, we don't know if he was invited or invited and didn't come, but Tim Cook's going to be there. Mark Zuckerberg's going to be there. I mean, it's going to be, I think you're going to see people with their pen and paper checking off who's there and who isn't there, and that will be a big discussion topic going forward, I think. Yeah, I think tonight will be a people watching event, and who is in line with the president and who is suspiciously not there as well, Sam.
Yes, it's a bit of like a who's who and who's in the club sort of thing at the moment. We've already seen these sort of high-profile visits from.
Let's see here. I think I want to go over the new China's weapons by the Telegraph. This was weapons that were shown during the parade. Now, RFK Jr. is talking right now at the Senate Finance Committee. He's testifying, but because of the censorship on YouTube, certain words, if it's said while I'm advertising, I do get a strike, so unfortunately, I'm not going to play it. But I will play maybe some segments of it on a different video. But this one, I don't want to have a strike, so unfortunately on YouTube, I have to be careful with medical misinformation. All right, so what I want to do is let's take a look at what's going on. No, I'm gonna shift over. I'm gonna shift to something else. Let's listen to Cash Jordan. We haven't played Cash Jordan.
Dearly beloved, we're gathered here today to celebrate.
How much should I save for my kids' tuition?
This raid happened this morning around 10, and an estimated 50 employees were taken away. This happened at the Smart Logistics and Freight Solutions warehouse where several companies are housed, like Amazon.
So, a massive Amazon warehouse was recently raided, and it might have to shut down. But while activists and agitators say raids like this threaten the entire U.S. economy, every time a warehouse full of criminals gets emptied, it ends up full of open job positions for those in America legally.
Witnesses to the raid Wednesday morning counted about 25 vehicles marked and unmarked pulling into a complex of warehouses. This man said he was working inside at the time. We are not identifying. He said at least 50 co-workers were questioned by agents.
This is extremely un-American. We're seeing families forcibly separated. Many of these workers did not realize that they worked at CBP-bonded facilities that would allow these entities to come into their workplace.
What they're looking at has been described to me as the largest form of modern slavery in the world. Because, and I've seen this with my own eyes, so many of the people coming across will have a little card in their pocket, which is a routing number for the cartel. If you haven't paid all of your fees by the time you cross, they will collect.
Employees left behind were visibly shaken, consoling each other, and some were seen leaving for the day. We're told this is a Customs Border Patrol bonded warehouse. Just last month, right here in Edison, the Alba Wine and Spirits warehouse was also raided, and some 20 people were detained.
The fact that some warehouses are getting away with hiring people illegally is flat out wrong. And what nobody's talking about is that the mass hiring of federal fugitives helps absolutely no one except for members of the criminal underworld. Plus, as you're about to learn, even if it looks like someone's benefiting from this, they actually aren't, because every illegal worker at an Amazon warehouse is another reason for gangs and smugglers to bring more people in. And if they don't have their $20,000 smuggling fee up front, no problem. There's an exploitative labor situation waiting for them in a warehouse somewhere in our country where they can work off their cartel debts. And the companies doing the hiring, they're not helping anybody either, because their very communities where they operate, well, the people who live there legally can't work at these facilities because all the jobs were given to people who aren't supposed to be here. That's right. Every forklift operator hiding in a warehouse somewhere trying to avoid ICE is one less open position for someone who's here legally. On top of that, a surplus of workers hampers wages and stifles innovation. Why pay someone more if someone else will work for less? And why innovate and improve your business to make more money when you can do the exact same thing with deflated labor costs? And that brings us to the real reason we need more workplace enforcement raids. Illegal labor holds our entire country back while giving companies massive amounts of leverage over a workforce they're not exactly kind and benevolent to begin with, while they churn out junk products or substandard services without any incentive to improve things because they're making more money every single day they hire someone who's willing to work for less. Until this happens.
So am I gonna get paid today?
So that was a raid at a wine warehouse, also in New Jersey. 24 people were taken into custody, which means 24 open positions now exist. Jobs local residents in New Jersey, a sanctuary state, couldn't apply for while federal fugitives were working there. And to be honest with you, everyone should be happy when corrupt companies that care nothing for their local community are finally held accountable for breaking the law.
Dozens of New Jersey warehouse workers are in federal custody following a raid that happened yesterday in Edison, and as Dave Carlin reports, it follows a similar operation that happened just last month.
Witnesses to the raid Wednesday morning counted about 25 vehicles marked and unmarked, pulling into a complex of warehouses along Patrick Avenue in Edison. This man, who said he was working inside at the time, we are not identifying. He said at least 50 co-workers were questioned by agents. He showed him his documents and was let go. But
So right away, we can eliminate a few myths about these ICE raids. This guy right here, who for some reason we want to keep a secret, that's fine. He's legally in America. He was not detained. And you know what that shows you? ICE isn't out there profiling people. They're going to places where they've got reports of criminal activity and they're detaining criminals and they're letting the innocent go. The wrong people are not being arrested. Apparently there were enough people here with fake work permits, fake IDs, or both, who are now no longer working in positions they're not entitled to have. That's the thing here. All of the jobs these individuals had were stolen from the community where this business is located. Now this business has to go out and hire people who are here legally and aren't using someone else's borrowed ID or stolen social security number. And now these businesses might have to have an actual interview process. They might have to do their own thing before they hire someone and let them work in a Customs and Border Patrol bonded facility.
it says dozens were taken into...
Future-proof your home and garden with AARP today. Harvest the rewards for years to come. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP.
Facility.
It says dozens were taken into custody. Here is another worker whose face and name we won't share. He said, without explanation, he was placed in handcuffs, then asked if he had documentation, which he says he did.
Okay.
So he was set free.
What's wrong with that?
Wristband. He says his leg was injured during the chaos of the raid.
This is
Wait a
extremely
second.
un-American.
How did this guy get injured during the raid? Did things escalate in a manner which we're not being told? Perhaps it did. Agents don't just show up at a place and start brutalizing people. If folks try to run away, if there's some sort of struggle, if the workers maybe want to be part of some resistance movement and rise up and try to stop these agents so they're...
You know what's amazing? This is how large corporations like Amazon could be taking advantage of the laxed labor laws that we have in certain constituencies in the United States, only to have Bezos in the top 5 richest people in the world. I mean, it's just, once again, we have an economy that is about slavery, but the slavery isn't like 1600 slavery. It's slavery of low wages from illegal immigrants. Now, I'm all about making sure our borders are protected, that are safe, non-porous, and that immigration is legal, not illegal. But there's another aspect to this, and that is very wealthy, uber wealthy people have benefited from illegal immigration. All right, let's go to, I want to play Times Radio here. They're talking about Kim Jong-un, how he tries to eliminate his DNA when he is traveling. He's paranoid of leaving DNA. All right.
Honestly, don't spend another dime online. We'll get into what's kind of gone on in the last few days. Now, all eyes were, of course, on this dynamic between Kim Jong-un, Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin when they met together for the first time in public in China for the military parade. But analysts and keen eyes were actually fixated on the guest that Kim Jong-un brought, which was, of course, his 12-year-old daughter, bringing her to the military parade in Beijing. Can you walk me through the significance of him bringing his daughter to this event?
Right. So North Korea is a monarchy, right? It sort of pretends to be a Marxist-Leninist state of the Cold War variety and all that, but those days are long over. North Korea is really basically a family despotism now. It's more sort of like, it's almost a feudal state, actually, in terms of the way it's governed. And we are now on the third royal, if you will, of the dynasty. Kim Jong-un, his father, governed from 1994 to 2011, and his grandfather governed from 1945 to 1944. So now we're at the third Kim the third, if you will, and there needs to be some kind of successor at some point. Kim Jong-un is 41, right? And so, I mean, at some point in the next, 30 years or so, he'll probably approach, the time when he wants to hand things on, and you need that kind of time to prepare the system in North Korea, right? I mean, you can't just have sort of an election and the successor is legitimate. I mean, you need good 10 or 15 years to build up the successor, and that looks like what this is with the daughter, right? That he's starting to lay the groundwork for the next dynastic succession. That's not unexpected. I think what's really interesting, of course, is that the successor in this case is a woman. The female dictators are very rare in modern authoritarian states. North Korea is not great, as you might imagine, on gender and gender equality and stuff like that. North Korea is basically a very male-dominated, patriarchal, traditional society when it comes to cultural mores. And I think that might be one of the reasons why Kim is starting now with the daughter, which is only 12. Because if this is intentional, if this is the intent, it's going to take a while to build her up and convince elites to accept her. So it's a 20-year process would be my guess.
Wow, well, that was going to be my next question, Bob, is that whether North Koreans would accept a female leader and whether it was normal to be grooming and priming her for leadership at just 12 years old.
Right, so that's the big question out there. If it is in fact intended to be the daughter, right, will North Korean elites accept a female? And to be honest, I don't know. My own sense is at the moment, no. But then again, he's got 20 years. Kim Jong-un is 41. I guess he's in reasonable health, and he's severely overweight. He's a heavy smoker, right? So, I don't know if he'll be alive in 30 years or something. But
he is not healthy at all. Absolutely not. Just look at the way he walks.
Got at least another 20 years ahead of him, which means he has time to groom the daughter. He has time to sort of groom elites and sort of filter out those who will support her and those who will not, and purge those who will not. But again, I'm hard-pressed to think of a modern authoritarian female leader who was in there for a really long time. The one example that comes to mind briefly, I suppose, is Indira Gandhi, who for a short time seemed to be kind of pulling India towards an authoritarian state, but she, of course, was assassinated. And, of course, we had female monarchs in the past, Elizabeth, and Catherine the Great and stuff like that. But a modern authoritarian female dictator who's in power for generations, for decades, that's really... I really can't think of anyone, and I think that's the real concern here, right? Will it work or not? On her side, I suppose, is that the last two dynastic successions in North Korea in 1994 and 2011, those both went off that hitch. The incoming Kim took over from the father who died, and there was no revolt, there was no secret police, fighting the army in the streets and all that. You didn't have anything like that, and so North Korea is primed for this. But the gender question is really just sort of up in the air. My own sense is, again, if it happened now, the answer would probably be no. But he's got some time to set up the framework.
Well, is this his own?
Before we continue, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Myotrol will help with gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle. Super important for individuals that are 40 years of age or older. Do resistance training. Take the Myotrol. It is polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help the gene expression to build muscle. It also helps the health of the mitochondria. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. And also take magnesium and zinc to boost up that immune system and help with your brain function. It's an excellent supplement. It's dual purpose, and magnesium also increases the efficacy of vitamin D3. You need this, especially in the fall and the winter season. So please take it every day. And a great stack to build muscle And to help with your immune system and brain function would be to take the magnesium and zinc and the myotrol together. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Use discount 5, all caps, discount the number 5, and you get $5 off any order.
Choice, Bob, because he obviously wants to keep it in the family, but is this the only option he has?
So apparently, rumor has it that he has a son who is 15. I believe his name is Jong. But we haven't seen him. It's also a rumor. He would be the obvious choice. First of all, he's older, right? This girl's only 12. The son is 15. The son's also a male, right? Which means you can sort of join the military and sort of do all that kind of stuff you do in North Korea to prove who you are. But we haven't seen him, and that's kind of an interesting question. Why, right? And there have been people near the royal family in North Korea, if you will, who felt uncomfortable with the regime or didn't want to participate or wanted to flee, wanted to move to Japan and stuff like that. So it's possible that the son, has had some kind of external education and looks at North Korea and says, "Oh my God, this is some terrible tyranny. I don't want to be a part of it." Right? He won't be purged because he's the son, but that might be the reason.
I think he has some external education, probably in Switzerland, and that he'll end up being the one that's running the country, and it's not the daughter. If that's true, that he has a son.
He is not out there, and this younger girl is. She may have sort of been more malleable on a question of leadership. But we just don't know. It really is speculation. But he would be the obvious choice. And it's kind of curious that we haven't seen him, right? And that suggests there's some kind of alienation between him and Dad.
If the 12-year-old is joining Kim Jong-un on such public events, Bob, and such significant events as going and meeting up with the other members of the axis of upheaval that they've been referred to as in the last few days, and literally going to Beijing and meeting with Putin, does it indicate that she's been groomed behind closed doors in private for a number of years if she's now being ready to make her public debut?
Yeah, I think so. And we've seen some of that already in North Korea. The media has already begun to refer to her. The North Korean media has begun to refer to her, I believe, as the treasured offspring or the treasured child. I can't remember the exact language. But the media has begun to build her up, which, again, is something we've seen before, right? When the Kims have in the past selected their successor, this person gets built up in the media as sort of this great figure who's done all these things from North Korea and some kind of divine role. The North Korean royal family kind of says that it's divinely chosen. That's almost like this sort of metaphysical presence. And so you're going to get this kind of build up. And that's sort of what we're seeing for her. We've seen her standing in front of North Korea's missiles and stuff like that in front of the big trucks with the gigantic ICBMs and everything like that. I mean, so there are already hints. This isn't the first time that we've seen her built up. This is, of course, because she's going overseas. That's a big deal, right? Leaving North Korea is really hard, right? And leaving with a father for such a high-profile event, right? That's even more remarkable. I think that's what people are really focusing on, because he probably would not have brought her where she might meet people from the Russian and Chinese governments, right? Unless she really was considered to be, on the leadership path. It's pretty extraordinary.
But Kim Jong-un, he spent time working or doing school overseas, didn't he, when he was a teenager?
Right. He went to school in Switzerland until his father's health began to decline around 2008. His father was a terrible alcoholic. And in the early 2000s, he began to sort of slip. And then in 2008, he had a pancreatic stroke. And so they brought the son back, Kim Jong-un, and they really built him up quickly because his father only died 3 years later. And so my guess is that Kim Jong-un is thinking, I got rushed through the succession process because my daughter is coming up to a woman, not a man. It's going to be trickier. Let's start early. So here you go.
So there's obviously been a lot of speculation, Bob, about Kim Jong-un's health in the last few years. You mentioned he was a heavy smoker. What is the speculation currently about it when we see him already grooming his daughter?
Yeah, I think that's one of the other things. I mean, you see this sometimes in the South Korean media. The South Korean media actually has, when sort of South Korean leaders or the U.S. president meets Kim Jong-un, they actually have doctors and stuff hovering around and probably watching to see how many steps Kim can take before he comes out of breath. Can he walk up a flight of stairs easily and stuff like that? Does he walk with a limp? Does he maybe scratch a part of his body or something like that? And one thing we had noticed is that, for example, he does have trouble walking great distances. This is something they observed back in 2018, and we know he's morbidly obese, and you can see that just from looking at him. Apparently he tried to give up smoking The word is that his wife tried to get him to stop smoking. That apparently wasn't successful. You see photographs of him smoking a lot. And I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I mean, it doesn't take much to see that being seriously overweight and being a heavy smoker is going to be pretty destructive. His father, like I said, his father was an alcoholic, and there have always been rumors at the top of the North Korean elite that alcoholism is rampant. There's widespread drug use, easy access for elites to things like cocaine and stuff like that. So if the current Kim is participating in the decadent lifestyle that his father and grandfather did, again, that would suggest that, he's not going to be 80. That might be one of the other reasons why.
You mentioned that Kim Jong-un only had about 3 years to be primed for the role between his father becoming sick and then eventually dying. So how does his priming of the role compare to his daughter's, Bob? Was he also being brought out on these high-profile trips?
Not until the very end. He was in Switzerland until, I want to say, literally, I think until 2008, 2007, 2008, and then sort of sprinted back. I could check on the exact dates. But we know that he went to Switzerland. You may recall, your viewers may recall, that there was some hope when he took over that he might liberalize North Korea. Everybody was friends with Dennis Rodman, and he liked basketball and all that. That was like a thing. Like, Dennis Rodman was going to, liberalize North Korea. Right? I remember that. And, that didn't really go anywhere. But it was kind of a hope, right? That, and his wife liked Chanel and Disney and stuff like that. And we thought that, maybe that might. We don't know if the daughter here has had Western education. My guess is probably. But again, we won't know because that'll all be hidden under layers and layers of security. We'll learn that later. Then she'll, at some point, presumably she'll be sprinted back to the country, start going through the grooming institutions. There are really 2 big institutions that run North Korea below the Kim family, and that is the...
Breaking news, the Department of Justice opens a criminal investigation on whether Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook did mortgage fraud. Let me just double check to see if that, yep. So the Justice Department opens criminal probe on Lisa Cook's mortgages. She should have stepped down.
And the party. And she would be wise to take over, to go through at least one of those, or particularly the military. That's tricky, of course, because she's a woman. In North Korea, the military is completely male-dominated. But, being able to say you're a general or something like that is always sort of important inside the military party state in North Korea. So my guess is that is what's coming next. So she's 12. So maybe when she's like 17 or something like that, she'll go and she'll serve some very light time in the military. She can wear a uniform and look like, she's sort of making these big sacrifices for the state. Again, that's what was done for the previous 2, and that would, probably be what will be done for her.
Bob, if this is the
We're a small business of artists, designers, animators. That's what we do. Bingo in HR were always a burden until we started project with Gusto. Seeing their platform up close, the UI, the designs, the animations, it was just.
Bob, if this is the case and she's being primed for the role of the supreme leader taking over North Korea whenever Kim Jong-un either passes or gives up his reign, what do you think this will do for feminism in North Korea? Will it do anything, or is it just kind of a one-stop shop just for this 12-year-old?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I mean, it is kind of like a weirdly progressive move from a place like North Korea. I mean, it is a little bit strange. And the other thing, too, is that even if she is pushed aside in sort of factional conflict or something like that, even if there is sort of backroom dealing that pushes her out, the other primary alternative to run North Korea is Kim Jong-un's sister, Jong. So probably North Korea is going to have a female leader, unless the 15-year-old son, who we've never seen, unless he kind of like suddenly is pushed to the fore, which would be pretty new, right? We don't even know if he exists, and we don't know anything about the kid. I mean, he's off in Switzerland like his dad was.
Why is Kim Jong-un so private about his personal life? Now, we obviously have seen the fact that Putin is as well, but why is it a thing that, the Western media, Western professors like yourself wouldn't know for sure if he had a 15-year-old son?
I think what they're primarily concerned about is that some of the family may be able to travel overseas incognito, and so we don't know where they are, and so we can't go and talk to them or kidnap them or something like that. When Kim Jong-un was in school in Switzerland, he had like a false name and everything like that. Like the school that he went to had to sign like an NDA or something like that they couldn't talk about where he was from. I mean, I think all of it was designed for state security because the North Koreans to get the top or so paranoid.
Of course, they're afraid of assassination or kidnapping. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator Barley. This will help to build muscle, soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase, bring down inflammation, and detoxify your body. Very powerful. It's a high-density protein. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk, but take it every day, do resistance training. Extremely powerful, help to detoxify your body and build muscle. High-quality product. Another product that you need to start stocking up for, especially for the fall and the winter season, are the gels. You can get it in the quick dispenser or in the tube form. Make sure you have some at work or at home. It's a dual purpose product. You can use it as a daily skincare. You can put it on a wound, like a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn. It'll help to heal it quicker. You can use it as an aftershave. And if you're not feeling well, or someone around you is not feeling well, either in the fall or the winter season, it behooves you to put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your nose, or around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours. Guess what? You can't do that with Perel. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you have some gel available and be prepared, because it is predicted that there's going to be a problem in the fall and the winter. So be prepared. And I have dual purpose deodorants. It'll help to detoxify your body, and you use it as a daily deodorant. It's for males and females. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. It has no baking soda, no aluminum, very high quality deodorants made from natural ingredients. Use it every day, and it's going to help to detoxify your body. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the deodorants. It's dual purpose. It'll help to detoxify your body too.
Or something like that. You know, the North Korean, usually what happens at the top in North Korea is like when you sort of rise to the top of the succession chain, right? You purge, you eliminate the other family members, the other possible pretenders, right? And so I think the North Koreans want to make sure the rest of us don't know about all these internal machinations. This is why, for example, right, people were noticing that the North Koreans brought their own toilets for Kim Jong-un into Beijing because they don't want to even leave any kind of DNA for the Chinese to sort of go and check if Kim has any illnesses or, you know, whatever. I mean, that's paranoia. But, you know, North Korea's been like that for decades.
Well, let's get into that, Bob, because I didn't know about that toilet report. But what we did see is aides of Kim Jong-un quite literally wiping down the seat or anything that he touched after his meeting with Vladimir Putin. Reports, of course, say that it is because of security measures, that they don't want any traces of DNA left behind. So can you walk me through a little bit more on why that would be? Are they so paranoid about anyone, even Beijing, who's meant to be, I guess, right now an ally?
Yeah, I think what they're really concerned about is perception that Kim Jong-un's health might be bad, right? That they want to make sure that there's no sort of biological information about him out there that the North Koreans don't control and release in any way. So the father, for example, had the pancreatic stroke, but we didn't actually know that until literally like foreign doctors who had treated Kim started sort of like leaking this information, right? And he had sort of other doctors looking at Kim. This was Kim Jong-il. We were watching him on television and looking for the way, for example, the way he moved his body. It was sort of paralyzed on the right side. And people kind of induced from that imagery and stuff like that, that what had happened to him. Right? The Kims didn't actually tell us really anything at all. North Korea just didn't say anything while Kim Jong-il disappeared for 6 months. And I think the paranoia is the same here. They just don't want any kind of information, particularly about the royal family out there, that is not controlled by them, right? I want to make sure that we don't have any sense of sort of like what are the illnesses and stuff like that. Is there any kind of like genetic defects that might be passed on or something, any kind of congenital issues, right? And this is all sort of like regime security to prevent any kind of external penetration. So we might use that information in some way against them, right? You know, we might carry them in the public, stuff like that.
Regardless of health, Bob, is Kim Jong-un and the North Korean leadership, are they paranoid in the same way that Vladimir Putin is?
Well, the Kims are certainly paranoid. They're very worried about assassination. We know about this, right? They're very worried about sort of internal coups and stuff like that, right? Buying off the army has been a central pillar of the Kim family dynasty since the 90s, right? Basically give the army whatever you want and you occasionally purge them. to make sure they don't sort of come together, consolidate, and then try to overthrow the Kim family. This is something they've all worried about. My guess is that's probably why the daughter will go through the army when she's old enough, because you got to make sure the army is more important than the party because they have the guns, right? And the North Koreans have been like this for a long time. I mean, this was explicit policy going back decades. They used to say that this Kim's father used to say Chosun, which is the Korean word for Korea. Chosun must be a fog, right? That we don't tell people anything, they don't know anything about it, right? We should be radically unpredictable, and then they'll be scared of us. The more information that they have about us, the more they can see our internal weaknesses. They know, for example, that we don't have a lot of roads built, or that our missiles don't work as well as we say they do, right? The less scared people are, the less we can deter them. And I think that's what a lot of it is, right? A lot of the perception is that all this secrecy makes North Korea more threatening. And so if the Americans and the South Koreans have like a view into the state and they understand things better, they can exploit those weaknesses and they'll be tougher with us.
Alrighty.
Big retailers don't want you to have this zoom lens, but there's
Alright, the
nothing
next
they can
video
do
I
to
want to
stop
go
it.
over here is about Harvard and the judge halting the freezing of the grants. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10. You can't get anything better for CoQ10 than what I have in my hand here. There's nothing better on the market. So please go to my store, get this ubiquinol, take it. What it's going to do is it's going to protect your neurons, help with your mitochondrial health, and boost up your ATP levels, and soak up free radicals. By doing that, it's going to slow down the aging process. You're going to have more energy, and even better, it's protecting neurons. If you're 40 years of age or older, you need to start protecting your neurons and increasing the health of your neurons. And you do that by proper diet and exercise, by learning new things, by reducing inflammation, and taking stacks that are neuroprotective. Now, NAD Plus is a supplement that will boost up your NAD Plus levels, increase your energy, help to repair DNA damage, including mitochondrial DNA, and it'll help to protect your neurons. Now, when you stack these together, it's a very powerful neural stack. You can also stack it with Clarity Factor, Goodnight Formula, C60, Resveratrol. So please go to my store, get the NAD Plus and the ubiquinol, and start protecting your neurons. You're going to notice that there are going to be higher incidences of early onset of dementia because of the crisis that we went through in 2020. Now, if you don't start protecting your neurons, you're increasing your chances of having problems with neurodegeneration. And you don't want that. So it's very important to protect your neurons. But it's not just taking the supplementation, it's also proper diet and exercise. And learn new things and try to get that positive neuroplasticity. Make sure you get proper sleep so you're getting your memory consolidating and you're detoxifying your central nervous system. So please go to my store and get the NAD Plus and the ubiquinol. And also get the collagen. Collagen is a dual purpose supplement. It's a powder, this is a month's supply. It has a very comprehensive amino acid profile shown on the screen here. You can read the label on my website. And collagen will help with your musculature, your joints and cartilage, your bones, your skin, your hair, and your nails. So it's dual purpose. You can mix it with soft foods, milk, a smoothie, filtered water, but take it every day and do some resistance training, super important. It also stacks well with the gel, C60, resveratrol, and vitamin C. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the very high quality collagen. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Welcome back. The Trump administration is on something of a losing streak in court. On Friday, a federal appeals court struck down many of the president's tariffs, saying he didn't have the emergency powers to levy them in the first place.
Yeah, there was a ruling on Sunday against the Trump team's attempts to deport hundreds of Guatemalan children. On Tuesday, a federal appeals court ruled against the president's attempts to deport alleged Venezuelan gang members without due process.
That same day, another judge said the White House broke the law by sending National Guard troops to put down protests in Los Angeles. And now, a district court federal judge in Boston has ordered the Trump administration to unfreeze more than $2 billion in federal grants to Harvard University. The Trump administration froze the money back in April after the university rejected the administration's demands to end its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and begin screening international students for ideological biases, including anti-Semitism.
The judge had sharp criticism for the Trump administration in her ruling, writing that it used anti-Semitism as a smokescreen for a targeted, ideologically motivated assault on this country's premier universities. She conceded that Harvard has been plagued by anti-Semitism in recent years and should, quote, have done a better job of dealing with the issue, but added.
Do you think that the elite institutions don't have bias agendas and biased perspectives in terms of the way the world should work? Where do you think this whole ultra woke culture is coming from? It's coming from the universities. They're ideologues.
Is, in reality, little connection between the research affected by the grant terminations and anti-Semitism. The Trump administration said it will appeal, calling the ruling an egregious decision. Joining us now, the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. Congressman Raskin, good to see you this morning. A lot of topics to get to, but let's start right there with this judge's ruling in Harvard. Harvard, of course, just one of the nation's leading universities that has been the Trump administration.
But why does Harvard have to get the grants? Why do they assume that they automatically should get it? That's one. They have hubris. Maybe they shouldn't get it. Two, the federal judge that said it was illegal, this is not a Supreme Court judge. So this is going to go up to the Supreme Court and they're going to make a decision. I'd be curious to see if they say this. This is not done yet. This is not done by far. It's not done yet.
Attempt to bring to heel, at least so far the judge not only said no, but did so forcefully.
Yeah, it's a powerful decision because it says, Harvard has had its problems with anti-Semitism. It's acknowledged them, it's faced them, it's confronted them, and that's got nothing to do with the Donald Trump administration trying to take over their admissions process, take over their curriculum, take over their faculty hiring. All of that is just being used as an excuse for this power grab, and the administration must release the more than $2 billion that's been withheld in critical scientific research funding. And so this is an important victory, of course, not just for Harvard, but for colleges and
Oh, they don't tell you that those grants, only a certain percentage actually goes to the actual research. There's a certain percentage that actually goes to admin. Now, Harvard is laying people off. Harvard is cutting programs, not just in sciences, but also in the humanities, cutting staff, cutting budgets. Now, if this was only affecting research, why would they be doing that? Because it's not only affecting research. They use this money to feed the admin machine. So it's a canard. I mean, it's fakery when they say that, oh, it's $2.2 billion to Harvard and it's going to cut It's going to cut scientific research. Yes, it's going to cut some scientific research. But why are they cutting admin then? Why are they cutting other programs? Oh, because they budget assuming that they're going to get that money. Why do they do that? Why do they do that? Because they think that they're automatically deserving of the grants. So in the worst case, from the perspective of Trump, so if they win at the Supreme Court level, which Harvard has not won yet on this issue at the Supreme Court level, but if they do, and they get the money, that doesn't guarantee under the Trump administration they get any more money, because it's just not guaranteed. This was funds that were supposed to be given, but were held. Well, what about future funds, future grants? Trump's going to be in office for 3 years. And at a tune of $1 billion or $2 billion, you're talking about $3 to $6 billion lost to Harvard. This ruling doesn't stop the Trump administration from not giving grants. It's just stopping the administration from releasing grants that were already awarded. This thing is not over by far.
All across the country who are under this severe threat to their academic freedom and to their scientific research.
We want to bring into the conversation at the top of the 9 o'clock hour on the East Coast, the 4th hour of Morning Joe, special correspondent at Vanity Fair and host of the Fast Politics podcast, Molly Jong Fast, the president of the National Action Network and host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, Reverend Al Sharpton, and former MSNBC host Chris Matthews. His Substack is entitled Hardball with Chris Matthews. Good to have you all. Reverend Al, you have a question.
Yes, I want to ask you, following up what you just said, do you feel that the whole fight around DEI, which in many cases have been distorted, now can have a clear view that this is something that the administration is politicizing, and that the academic community has been trying to deal with more on a balanced way, not an advocacy way, and that this ruling can help bring that forward, even though it will likely be appealed by the president and go to a Trump Supreme Court? At least that's what they'll try to do.
Yeah, I think that's right. Obviously, Trump has wanted to attack any kind of diversity or equity initiative at the colleges and universities, and made common cause with the most right-wing forces in the country to try to dismantle it. Of course, if there were any race discrimination or gender discrimination going on, then people should bring those as lawsuits. But otherwise, the federal government should back off and allow the colleges and universities to govern themselves. We don't need the Trump administration and Stephen Miller and Donald Trump micromanaging the admissions process of colleges and universities.
The problem is that they are empty vessels. The students are empty vessels. And they're getting rhetoric that is very biased, that is socialistic, communistic in many cases, destructive. It's not promoting God, country, and family, for sure. And that if you try to have a conservative talking on these campuses for a debate, what happens? The liberals try to scream at the venue and eventually cancel the event. You don't have that with conservative students screaming up a thunderstorm to some sort of liberal event. But it's always the other way around. When there's a conservative mindset, they'll try to shut down the conservative. The liberal will try to shut down the conservative. So these students don't even allow for the dialectic to happen. They don't want to hear the antithesis of their position. So is it diverse? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Is it inclusive? Where these universities are allowing for proper dialogue between liberals and conservatives? Absolutely not. They want conformity. This DEI is bringing in people that aren't very academically inclined in many cases. The standards are going down, and it's pushing a certain socialistic agenda. Now, the country needs to move towards conservatism. The only way that's going to happen is when you get rid of DEI. Why do you have to have DEI? Why? Oh, we need to have a diverse, work group. All right, look at corporate America. Look at what happened to Cracker Barrel with DEI agendas that tanked the stock. What about Bud Light with DEI? Destroyed an American brand forever. You can't recover. Bud Light cannot recover. So you have these people that are actually destroying Americana. You have these people that are actually destroying businesses because they want to make it generic. Are the kids smarter these days compared to previous generations? No. Do they have a fortitude? Do they have the fortitude to persevere? No. Are they getting into adulthood at the right moment for milestones? No. Their development is actually retarded. So, wait a minute here. Is DEI actually a good policy? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think DEI policies need to be eliminated.
Across the country, we're talking about thousands of campuses, and we don't need to have Stalinist style control.
The problem comes in is that they're trying to demonize Trump as being too governmental controlling of the universities. Yet, what they're doing is they're producing students that are pushing socialism, and then they get into politics, and now you have democratic socialists. So DEI allowed that to happen. DEI allows for the percolation of politicians and government officials to be Democrat socialists. So who really is the Stalinist? Is it Trump? Or is it actually the students that are coming out of these DEI programs from these universities? It's the latter, not the former. All right, let's go to the Forbes breaking news about, I think this is dealing with Nile Farage. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take this stack that's going to help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Lignans. Lignans brings down inflammation, helps your immune system and your endocrine system. It soaks up free radicals. That's going to help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Turmeric brings down inflammation and also soaks up free radicals. Super important for vascular system and immune system. And ashwagandha root controls your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. Important for your vascular health and for your immune system. Now, stacking these together, they're synergistic. You're going to improve and supercharge your immune system and reduce plaque formation. So go to my store, get the turmeric, the lignans, the ashwagandha, take it every day, and help support your health. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Click the link in the description to my website the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Thank you, Mr. Price. The Right Honourable Member of Parliament, Mr. Farage, is recommended.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chairman Jordan, for inviting me here today. And it turns out, with news of the last 48 hours, to be really rather timely. I'm delighted to reacquaint with the charming Mr. Raskin, and a delightful testimony you gave me earlier on with your speech. But hey, that's fine. You can say what you like. I don't care. Because that's what free speech is. And in a sense, this has all been going wrong now for a couple of decades. We've kind of forgotten the Voltairean principles that we'll fight and defend to the death your right to say something that we fundamentally disagree with. That is the absolute foundation, if you think about it, of free speech and democracy and living in freedom. It's kind of why we fought 2 world wars at massive, massive cost to defend that very principle for ourselves and for many, many others around the country. And I first became worried about all this with cancel culture. You know, the idea that we can't have this speaker go to university because some people might be offended by what he or she...
And that's part of the DEI policy. If you talk negative, you're going to get canceled. You saw this during COVID. You saw this during different conservative individuals trying to speak at universities. You see this with anyone that talks in social media against a certain side of the argument. Oh, you just try to cancel them, try to demonize them. If someone is, let's say, pro-inoculation, and you're talking to a group of people that are anti-inoculation, they try to cancel you. Or vice versa. Let's say you're anti-inoculation and you're talking to a pro-inoculation group. They try to cancel you. Right? Too much canceling going on. And that's an element of DEI. Well, if you don't give adequate attention to diversity and including people, then you're wrong and you need to be canceled. Well, wait a minute, how do you have a disagreement? DEI doesn't allow for disagreement. And what it is it's actually a side philosophical tributary of relativism. Relativism is basically, you're looking at the same thing and both perspectives are correct. That's being inclusive. That's having diversity. But is relativism really true? Is it really true? Now, in the purest sense, if you look at something from one person's perspective, it looks like one thing, and from another perspective, it may be something totally different. And the reality is if you look at it from another dimension, not in the dimension the dimensions that are constraining the observers, but a higher dimension, you may actually say that it's something totally different. So the truth, the real truth of the object, is not truly represented in the perspective of the two individuals. So are they right? No, they're not. So in this whole idea of relativism, which also goes into this whole postmodernism stuff, has made society worse, not better off. Not better off. Because what happens is that it doesn't allow for real discussion. They don't allow for the dialectic. You're canceled if you don't agree, if you don't include everybody's ideas. Well, maybe most people are wrong.
To say, it is important to note that there is not a parent in the United Kingdom, and I would guess it's the same for America too, which is not concerned about content their children as minors can find on the internet. Not a single parent that is not concerned about this. But at the moment, we're not finding the right solutions. I do myself begin to think that hardware might be one of the solutions. That laptops, that handsets could be programmed so that many apps and many services simply aren't available from these devices. But what we've done is to go down the legislative route. And it's extraordinary that, I come from a land of Magna Carta. I come from a land that gave us the mother of parliaments. And it doesn't give me any great joy to be sitting in America and describing the really awful authoritarian situation that we have now sunk into. J.D. Vance did us all a service at the Munich Security Conference back in February this year. He really got this debate up and running, and it's a vital one. We've run on since then. The Online Safety Act was put in place by the last Conservative government. I don't doubt for a minute they're good intentions, but sometimes the road to hell is paved with those good intentions. And we are now where we are. We have a couple of very famous cases. We, of course, have Lucy Connolly, who put out an intemperate tweet after the savage murder of those 3 beautiful young girls, she herself, a mother who had lost a child. It was intemperate, it was wrong, but she removed it 3.5 hours later, sentenced to 31 months in prison. She's now out, having served 40% of the time. I wanted to bring her with me today as living proof of what can go wrong. Sadly, the restrictions that have been put on her banned her from making the trip, which is a very great shame. And we, of course, have the extraordinary events that we understood yesterday of Graham Linehan, the comedic writer, and he put out some tweets months ago when he was in Arizona, and months later he arrives at Heathrow Airport to be met by 5 armed police. Armed police, not a big deal in the USA, a very big deal in the United Kingdom. 5 of them. And he was arrested and taken away for questioning. He's not even a British citizen. He's an Irish citizen. This could happen to any American man or woman that goes to Heathrow that has said things online that the British government and British police don't like. It is a potentially big threat to tech bosses, to many others. This legislation we've got will damage trade between our countries, threaten free speech across the West because of the knock-on rollout effects of this legislation from us or from the European Union. So I've come today as well to be a klaxon, to say to you, don't allow, piece by piece, this to happen here in America. And you will be doing us and yourselves and all freedom-loving people a favour if your politicians and your businesses say to the British government, you simply got this wrong. At what point did we become North Korea? Well, I think the Irish comedy writer found that out 2 days ago at Heathrow Airport. This is a genuinely...
And that right there is DEI happening in Western society. They're trying to prevent you from being able to speak. And that is ushering in that democratic socialism. Let's just, as Mondani says, let's just do some experimentation to see if it works, even though all you got to do is look at Cuba and China and the Soviet Union. What these democratic socialists want is control, one-party rule. And the moment you have one-party rule, and you have DEI policies where you can't talk and say things that might hurt people's feelings, how are you going to be able to rise up against that one-party rule? Believe me, our founding fathers were way smarter than the average person. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Goodnight Formula. Goodnight Formula is going to help to consolidate memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and you'll have the energy because you're well rested after your sleep. It has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. A few other ingredients, but Those are really important. Now, good night formula take every night, drink it with filtered water, and it'll allow you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of deep sleep and REM sleep that will allow you to detoxify your central nervous system and consolidate memory. So it's a very important neural health supplement. Now, Clarity Factor gets rid of brain fog, helps to support your memory. And over time, what you're going to notice is that your dendritic connections are improving. So you have positive neuroplasticity. You're going to be able to think faster. You're going to be able to concentrate longer, and you'll be able to retrieve your memory quicker. So take this neural stack together. Good night formula and Clarity Factor. You can also stack it with NAD+ and ubiquinol. But it's important to take care of your neurons. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Clarity Factor and the Good Night formula. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Click the link in the description. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com to get to my website and purchase the great products that I offer. All right, let's listen to Malcolm Gladwell admitting that he's a coward for not standing up against trans sports.
Build a website you love with Wix, where your words create your brand, your opportunity, your breakthrough. Wix.
Popular journalist and author Malcolm Gladwell is in the news for remarks he gave on the topic of transgender athletes.
Gladwell recently appeared on the Real Science of Sports podcast, where he recalled a panel that he moderated 3 years ago with podcast host Ross Tucker. Gladwell says he felt he was cowed at the panel, and he's ashamed he did not push back more against the idea of trans women playing female sports.
If we did a replay of that exact panel at the Sloan Conference this coming March, it runs in exactly the opposite direction. And it would be, I suspect, near unanimity in the room that trans athletes have no place in the female category. I don't think there's any question.
Now, Gladwell went on to say that he thinks the movement behind allowing trans women.
So the thing was, why didn't he have the fortitude and the moral fiber to go against it while he was on stage? See, it's too late now. See, it's good that he admits that he made a mistake and that he should have been more forceful against trans athletes in women's sports. But the thing is it's too late. You've already done the damage. But this is another aspect of DEI. Out of control stupidity. So it's going to affect our politics, it affects our sports. It affects mating practices within a society. It erodes the foundation of the pillars. God, country, and family. It's crazy.
Compete in female sports has gotten too extreme.
What the trans movement is not asking for, they're not asking for, a place at the table. They're not asking to be treated with respect and dignity. What they're asking is for no one to question the considerable physiological advantage they bring to the sport, and no one to question if they're going to win these races by 5 seconds. Suck it up. That's what they were asking.
Now, some people, such as Tim Miller from MSNBC, didn't take kindly to Gladwell's stance. Miller, writing on X, quote, "Rich people stop blaming their clinical desire to be loved on others' challenge. These guys weren't cowed into anything. They said then in vogue thing, then they are saying the in vogue thing now."
Meanwhile, conservative commentator Matt Walsh says that while he agrees with Gladwell on the issue, he doesn't trust him because of this. Quote, "I'm glad that all of these people finally coming over the same side of the issue, but this is not a forgive and forget situation. You were cowed into denying basic biological reality. You've permanently lost your credibility, and we can never trust you again. This went very viral on social media yesterday. Lindsay, a lot of people reacting to this.
This is an example of this pendulum swinging from this ultra-liberalism towards conservatism, that I keep on saying. That's going to take years, but there is a conservatism green shoot starting to pop up in America. And so these intellectuals like Gladwell, who's actually Canadian, but I believe he lives in New York City. So these intellectuals or pseudo-intellectuals are starting to see that this pendulum is moving. And they don't want to be on the wrong side because they got to sell books. If they're on the wrong side, they're not going to sell books. And so what they did was they aligned themselves with the liberals because that's where the book sales were at the time. But now the conservatism pendulum is starting to swing. And now they're afraid that their cash flows are going to be affected. So they're all changing. They're all jumping ship instead of using common sense. If you're an intellectual, stand your ground. There's nothing wrong with actually working through the problem, right? And then you change your mind through deliberate debate with another side. All right, let's say you have a strong position on something, and for years, and you're debating it with the opposite group, and eventually something happens in your life, and you say, you know what, maybe you're right. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're deliberating. But if you just are looking around and you're just saying, well, I really don't believe this, and I'm going to say it on stage that what I don't believe, and then tell people later in life that I'm going to, that I was wrong in saying it and I was afraid. Well, that's not being an intellectual. That's not being truthful, especially to your base that purchases your books or reads your articles, your op-eds or whatever. Being dogmatic and not being willing to understand perhaps the other side's argument and the pluses and minuses to it isn't being a true intellectual. But it's also true that if you cave in too early, that, because of the pendulum swinging, maybe you're not being a honest intellectual. So I've read Gladwell's books, not all of them, but many of them. Outliers, Blink. The Blink was the first one I ever read. And Outliers. I think maybe one other one. I can't remember I don't remember the third book. But the point here is he's an intellectual. He's a famous intellectual. He's sold a lot of books. New York Times bestseller. The guy has made a lot of money on selling books. Being I believe he's a sociologist by training. But the thing is that he's a good speaker and he writes on content that is pertinent to society at the time. But to be so far off on this issue, we're allowing trans athletes to compete in women's sports and not seeing, and that is the wrong side of the issue. He needs to seriously think about his bias. And not just that, there is this chemical pulsing in society through the foods that are consumed, through the chemicals in the environment that are affecting the endocrine system and the hormonal system that are affecting these kids. Then they get pulsed by a psychological vector, where they get confused, and then there's gender dysphoria. So this combination of chemical and psychological vectors that are disrupting the normal processes for adolescence. And the end result is producing individuals that are confused, individuals that think that they're wrong, that they're the wrong gender or whatever. And then you have the medical community saying, oh, that's okay. Here's a bunch of medication to change your hormonal balance. Oh, you can have surgery too. And then they're permanently scarred. And this is the why there's a lot of suicides with these patients. There's a lot of psychological problems with these patients. So the intellectuals made things worse, not better for these kids. But they made a ton of money writing books, getting on a panel, being famous. But once the pendulum starts to swing in the opposite direction, they jump ship. And this is the problem with most intellectuals. They don't stand their ground. It's all about the money. But a true intellectual will realize at times, not always, but at times, that maybe the opposite side is correct in some of its analysis. But with cordial debate, the other side will also start to realize that maybe they're wrong too. But there's a serious problem with this whole DEI and acceptance of gender fluidity and gender dysphoria, and not realizing that it is the chemicals that these people are around that are either illicit or just in the natural environment or in the food supply, and the psychological vectors that are pushing this. Like if you notice during Pride Month, and how it's psychological vectors on the younger crowd now. So by the time they're, by the time that their hormonal levels are starting to change at age 12, age 13, age 14, right? They start to get confused then, because they've been pulsed with these chemicals and the psychological vectors of gender dysphoria when they were younger. So it becomes harder it increases the chances. Well, I mean, this is part of the reason why a lot of the younger generation just looks ugly. There's an ugliness to this DEI. There's an ugliness to this gender dysphoria. But if you take this to the extreme, this is a way to radically cut the population down. Now the question is why is it happening also to the ultra rich? You would think that if the ultra rich wanted to control the little people, that they would create these kinds of gender dysphorias and stuff and have them confused, and the rich will be able to take advantage of them. But many rich kids are having these issues. Now, I think asking that question, I don't know the answer, but asking that question, why is it also happening with the rich? Not just the poor, not just the middle class. I don't know. But there's something wrong. And these intellectuals need to realize it's about God, country, and family to have a strong society. Promoting DEI and promoting gender dysphoria is not going to make the society strong.
Scenario that Gladwell lays out. So according to him, he thought all along it was a little suspect to let trans women compete against biological women in sports, but he felt like he couldn't say that because the elite consensus was so strongly in favor of that position. even though the popular...
If he was a true intellectual, he would go against the grain. He didn't want to affect his readers from the New York Times because he knows they're a bunch of liberals or ultra liberals. It was all about the money. It was all about the fame. It was all about making sure that he still had a base to buy his stuff and read his articles. It wasn't about truth. It never is with these people.
Opinion, this is always like an 80-20 issue, right? Even among like Democrats, which goes to show you the power of ideological groupthink among very progressive cultural commentators that were that far to the left, and you'd be afraid to offend them when the people are so much the other way. I think Tim Miller is very, very wrong there in his analysis that. Right, he just was saying the popular. Why did he feel pressure? The pressure was real. People, journalists, with that perspective, were early on were ostracized. Yes, right. That now is caught up to public opinion.
Right. See, this is the problem. This is the problem. Ultra liberals don't want free debate. They don't want real debate. They want to cancel people. You shut them down, especially if they are on the other side of the argument and they're intellectual and have a following. So they want to cancel you. And then they try to scream you down or whatever. They have all these different strategies, but it's no different than Mao. It's no different than Stalin. Democratic socialism is what this will lead to. Trust me on this. What democratic socialism will force at the societal level is that you can't say certain things. I mean, you have situations in Michigan that if you say certain words that you can get ticketed or fined. What? This is the land of the free and the home of the brave. The First Amendment is freedom of speech. But that's a DEI policy through democratic socialism. They may call themselves just a Democrat, but it's a democratic socialism. They want groupthink. They need groupthink to have a one-party policy. Let's look at countries that have one parties. Look at China. Do you think they have freedom of speech? Can you really be against what the party thinks you should think? No, you'd be killed. What about North Korea? Doesn't seem to be working there either. One party rule doesn't work.
Descent from what a very small number of people think, at least in the US and the UK, you can be arrested for it, as I pointed out in my radar. But it is interesting that we've come a long way since the period 5 years ago or so, the height of what I consider the height of wokeness. What do you think?
Well, I think what he said was at the conference that he felt like he got cowed into saying something was 3 years ago. So that takes us to 2022. That time was totally different than now. And so the actual feeling of speaking up about something.
This goes right into what I was saying before. It's about the pendulum. The pendulum started swinging towards conservatism when the riots were happening right after October 7th. And I stated, I think it was on October 10th of 2023. Guess what? You're going to see the liberals eating themselves alive. They're going to be eating their own tail. The logic will eat themselves. And that's exactly what's happening. And the intellectual like Gladwell, he's not a dumb guy. The intellectual like Gladwell is now starting to see, whoa, wait a minute, there's the pendulum starting to swing. You didn't see the pendulum swinging in 2022. No, it wasn't swinging then. It happened in October of 2023. And it was just starting. And then you had Trump coming in and conservatism starting to move forward. Look at the way people are dressing. You have a part of society that has that urban look, an urban wear look, where the fast fashion, but then you have another section of society that is starting to move away from that, and they're moving towards a more conservative look. It's happening. So people want the white picket fence in suburbia, not the urban garbage dump that most people are living in.
In this moment, the active feeling of speaking up against anything that you think Israel or Benjamin Netanyahu is doing is the same kind of thing of like people were afraid to speak up at some point because they feel like they'll be labeled as anti-Semitic, but now some people are not scared to say, no, Benjamin Netanyahu could be in the wrong in these ways, and here's what we would do differently. That pendulum has swung to center so people can actually have a thought. Just like he's actually allowed to have a thought about if he feels that we should look more at biology when it comes down to transgender people. I think that, he was being a journalist that was trying to be objective in a dishonest way, is how he described it, because he felt like the consensus was that maybe from really loud voices that were minimal at the time, however you want to say, but they were very loud. Because I understand that we started to have those conversations and I was on air at that time, that you just want to walk the line. So you can't even question or ask the question without looking like there should be a fear of backlash or without feeling like you're going to get attacked by the loudest people in many rooms. So in that regard, I'll agree with you that sometimes the circulation on a lot of popular channels can be similar. And then you're like, especially around that topic, it was like, oh, you can't even. Especially around that topic, it was like, oh, you can't even ask the question. And what changed things for me is that I was able to sit down in the last few years on a personal time. I was at the hair salon with the mother of a transgender person. And I think that conversation really allowed me to have an attachment and understanding from her perspective of what that feels like. So a lot of times we're talking about it and nobody has a direct contact or link to any of this group of people or this experience. And so people are just saying what they would do with it. You don't know unless you have a kid that's transgender. You don't know unless you're in the situation. And so I think we're speaking from a place that's like not real. And I think it's important when you try to navigate new situations or how to talk about them, that you not.
The society should not change because of a very, very small percentage of the people. Why would you change women's sports completely? Because of a very, 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 very small percentage of the people. There are a small percentage of the population that is legally retarded, legally, mentally handicapped. All right. But does that mean that all admissions to all schools should be at their level? Should everyone be taught at that level? Should society change at that level?
Berated for making a mistake or for trying to understand a social issue that is rapidly changing. Like, it's hard to keep up with a lot of things. Like, if I got a pronoun wrong, I would be scared back in the day. And now people just talk to me, no, refer to me as this. And this is just something that you have to give grace and let people learn. And I think that was taken away largely in the height of 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And a lot of the changes were made with good intention, trying to, stop people from being abused in certain ways, stop certain groups from being mistreated. But I think the pendulum swung so far that people were scared to say anything. And that's too far all the time.
And I assume, I guess I don't know, I haven't polled them myself, but that most trans people, most trans women also think that having, in certain sports categories, having trans women compete against biological women, cis women to use that term, is not fair or called for. It depends on the sport. It depends on the age level.
No.
But
No. If you're karyotype XX, you're a female, and you can be in that female sport. If you're XY, you're a male, and therefore only male sports. Now, if it's a sport that is like co-ed kind of sport. I can't think of one right now, but let's just say there was a co-ed sport. I don't know, archery or something. I don't know what. Then that would be okay. There's no problem with that. But if it's a female sport or a male sport, it's based on your karyotype, period. Not anything but your karyotype.
Right. They're seeking, equal accommodation and dignity, not and legal rights, not to win the every swim meet on earth. So that the consensus was so that elites so wanted to make it that you couldn't dissent with that when even that's not even what trans people are fighting for. I don't think. Not that I speak for them or know exactly what it is that they want, but I don't. The ones I've talked to don't sound like our top issue is making sure one of us takes the gold medal at the at the Olympics.
Well, on the other side of that, I think Republicans do a really good job at hyper activating issues that are really fringe, right? So there's not a pandemic of trans athletes taking the gold home and so that's what I'm saying. No, it's not. No, stop. I don't think that's. Let me just say
one.
Okay, fine, one, but how many schools are across the country? How many collegiate sports are happening across the country? So, yes, we should look at this and try to figure out how to handle it they are.
But that one has a high likelihood.
But the incident doesn't have to match the outrage. That's what I'm saying. It's not that outrageous. If it's one in the entire country for the year, if it's 5 for the country, and knowing how many schools are in the country, outrage from the Republican side.
No. This should be absolute. Women sports are for women. How do you define a woman? Based on the karyotype, if they have an XX karyotype. Male sports are for males. How do you know what a male is? Karyotype, XY. It's that simple. It's that simple. Now, what happens in a rare case where you might have an XXO? Female, because they don't have a Y chromosome. Now, what happens when in rare cases you have XXY? They have a Y chromosome. They're male. Now, what happens if the phenotype doesn't match the karyotype? Meaning male, because of the developmental issues, they don't have the genitalia of a male, but they have the karyotype of a male. You're still a male because you have the karyotype. It's based on karyotype, not phenotype.
The match was actually happening, and so that's why when you say
outrage never matches exactly
right, but when you say that
outrage to reality,
when you say that the people on the left were too dramatically trying to say let trans people do whatever and making people feel scared to talk, people on the right were actively acting like this was a disaster that was about to take the world down. We need to get ahead of it right now, and I think both are dramatic. We need to come together and actually maybe sit down and see what trans people are looking for. Because like you said, I can't speak for the community, don't know. But what I understand is that
swim meets and track meets.
Fine. And what I understand is that this is a legitimate community that feels that they are isolated in many ways and probably wants to start with being heard and not people speaking for them on either a liberal or a Republican network, right? They probably just would like to speak for themselves. So how about just having more people at the table and say what they want? Because I actually have never, even that woman was not talking about sports with me, with her kid, right? It had nothing to do with sports. Her kid was just living her normal life, doing her regular job and enjoying her day. It had nothing to do with playing a sport. And so that conversation is kind of rare, at least. And it's rare that I even had a conversation with a trans person very often. So what I'm saying is maybe more people need to be in the room that are actually of that community so we can understand what's really wanted and what they're requesting.
Next up, Ben Shapiro and Scott Jennings clashed with Anna Kasparian on CNN over Social Security and funding for foreign wars.
We're going to play another video about Harvard, but this is from the perspective of Bloomberg with the legal victory. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the nattokinase. Nattokinase is fibrinolytic. It's going to help to break up clots. And it'll help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. So when you do that, that's going to help with your cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the nattokinase. Use discount 5 and get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
I started All Nation Restoration to help people.
Chase for Business is literally what it says in the name. It is Chase for Business, where I can find everything I need in one place. So we can help people get back to life.
Well, it's a federal court. It is in Boston. It's in a particular circuit, district court, and then we'll go to appeal circuit. So, the question is, can the administration put strings on federal money to private educational institutions? That's a big question. They do. There's lots of regulations that come with federal money already, so there's a precedent for that. Certainly, and institutions have now taking much less money in indirect costs, what we call it, from grants from the federal government, and they just, they do that themselves. The federal government said we're just cutting indirect costs. So I don't know what the courts will do. Is it really the case that the federal government can't put any strings attached to the money they give to private institutions? I don't know that that's clear. I don't know if this ruling is going to hold up because this is territory we're used to in higher education, but there's no precedent for saying that, higher education, particularly private institutions, have some legal claim against conditions placed on money by the federal government.
Inside Baseball with Wendy Schiller, Brown University. Wendy, the first week of September, Charlie Cook has to publish, the Venerable Cook over at the Cook Political Report, and he headlines, Wendy, the two governor races coming up here in November. Redistricting aside, Democrats' glass is half full. Do you agree with that the Democrats have momentum? Paul and I really don't see that.
Charlie Cook and of course Amy Walter, who's joined a couple of years ago on the Cook Report. Virginia is dicey. It should be a bigger lead for Abigail Spanberger running for governor than it is now, with some serious lieutenant governors running. And that lead is shaky. It's not quite within the margin of error, but it's going in the wrong direction for Democrats. So that's the question I'm thinking about. What about turnout? Lots of federal employees unhappy in Northern Virginia. You'd think that would give the Democrats a pretty big advantage. We're not seeing that as solidly in the polling in Virginia, and that is worrisome for the Democrats. Jersey looks pretty secure. I think Nikki Sherrill is a very strong candidate. It's got a military background. So I don't think I was worried about Jersey. But if they lose Virginia, the Democrats, I think that takes a lot of wind out of their sails. The other state to look at is Iowa. We see a lot of churn in Iowa right now, and that churn seems to be pointing in the Democrats' direction.
Wendy, one area of attention from President Trump over the last several weeks, months, has been the Federal Reserve and his influence over it. Stephen Myron's going to have a hearing this morning. What do you think President Trump's strategy is here, or view of the Federal Reserve is here?
Well, the immediate is, of course, to push them to reduce interest rates. We saw a little bit of this movie in the first Trump administration. Don't raise interest rates, keep them really low, pressure on Powell. Certainly Powell's looking at more towards the end of his term now, so I'm not sure how much that will work, but certainly an immediate cut in interest rates because the Trump administration wants to claim that they're shepherding the economy well. We're seeing some slight warning signs in the economy that that's not what's happening, and the full brunt of tariffs on consumer expenditures hasn't really been felt yet. And if the court really does hold, Supreme Court, that these tariffs went well beyond the authority of the section the president's been using, then that shakes up things as well. And I think that's where the Federal Reserve could say, okay, if we don't have the tariffs, then maybe things get a little bit more reasonable and we can keep rates steady. And that will only infuriate Donald Trump. So that's a big problem because with it is the economy. They own it. It's not Biden's economy anymore. It's Trump's economy. And this is all tied together with how the economy is faring.
One minute here. This I think is fascinating. Is this uproar over redistricting in Texas? I can't say the word. I got Lisa Mateo. I got to go to Lisa Mateo. Speak clearly lessons. Redistricting, Wendy. Okay, California.
Just say gerrymandering.
Yeah, gerrymandering. I can do that. Gerrymandering was great. I love Eldridge. You got California, ginormous. Texas, ginormous. Rhode Island may go from 2 congressional seats to 1 in the 2030 census. Discuss that. I mean, it's like what? 98% Democrat. There's 5 token Republicans living on Ocean Drive in Newport. I get it. But what is it like to be in a state that will go from 2 seats to 1 seat possible in 2030?
Well, Rhode Island's very grateful for the bicameral chamber, the Senate and the House. and they've had very influential, particularly Jack Reed and Sheldon Whitehouse, also the senators. And Jack Reed, in particular, Appropriations Armed Services, has really punched well above his weight, and that's what the Senate does for smaller states. That's what the whole fight in the very beginning, as you well know, and it's still very much true today. Small population states benefit greatly from having 2 senators. So that's what the counterbalance is for a state like Rhode Island. But the danger for Rhode Island and the danger for the Democratic Party is to read tea leaves from these really, really concentrated supermajority bubbles like we have on the East Coast and the West Coast. And that's, I think, what takes the party nationally astray. And that's where they have to really focus on the grand middle of the country politically. So when I think about Rhode Island, I think, what does this mean for the country? It's not really a harbinger. It's really an outlier. Right. We're going to look at New Hampshire. New Hampshire was trending blue for a long time. Seems to be maybe trending red again. Yeah. So I think that's what we're looking at.
My daughter is being treated for leukemia. It hit me hard. It did. Being a girl dad, it really just...
All right, let's listen to G0 about Venezuela and U.S. involvement.
Hi everybody, Ian Bremer here, and we want to talk about Venezuela, where the United States has now engaged in an initial strike, claiming a drug enforcement mission, and we saw lethal strikes just yesterday against the vessel that was allegedly carrying drugs from Venezuela towards the United States. It clearly is not just that. If it was, it'd be massive overkill. We've got 7 U.S. warships, a nuclear submarine, over 2,000 Marines, and several spy planes that have been sent into the area. And this is clearly not just a drug interdiction, but at the very least the beginning of a blockade and regular attacks against those that are seen as trafficking. I would not be surprised at all to see military strikes against terrorist gangs inside Venezuela and their infrastructure. Whether or not that also targets the Venezuelan military and even the political leadership is an open question. Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, he has both jobs, Marco Rubio, has been focused on this issue for a long time and would be very happy to see that outcome. And the United States has taken a number of steps to target that direction in their increase of the ransom that is the bounty on President Maduro's head, in reaffirming that the United States does not view Maduro as a legitimate head of state, but rather the head of a cartel, the head of a terrorist organization. And even the fact that Trump has said that he wants to rebrand the Department of Defense into Department of War, all of that implies that we're going to see escalated military activities inside Venezuela. So I don't think this is a one-off. It's still not getting a lot of attention. It probably deserves more, but that doesn't mean regime change. Even though you have the symbolism of an expeditionary force, I'd be very surprised to see boots on the ground, frankly, at all. But certainly if we do anything more than a quick raid, that President Trump personally does not want to see the United States involved in another quote-unquote forever war, doesn't want to be responsible for governments on the ground in the way that we've seen in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Vietnam. That has been a clear message from Trump since he ran for the presidency the first time around, and I don't see a change there. The place that I do see a change, interestingly, not in Venezuela, but Israel. Trump's policies in Israel were very different from America First. Huge amounts of money, of course, continuing to go to Israel from the United States. Very consistent with what we've seen from Republicans and Democrats for many, many years now. Very different from how Trump is shutting down USAID and pulling out American support
from Ukraine and all of that. Israel's the exception. Also an exception because the new plan on Gaza, the so-called Great Plan, shows that the U.S. would join with Israel in being administrators of Gaza, which is something that really flies in the face of America First and in what Trump has had to say about U.S. foreign policy entanglements around the world. But the money and the political support that Trump continues to get from pro-Israel voters, both Jewish in the United States, but also conservative Christian, continues to drive that, as well as his personal relationship with the Israeli leadership. So I don't expect a change there. I just recognize that it's very different from expectations of what we're likely to see in Venezuela going forward. That's it for me. I'll talk to y'all. Listen.
I'm going to play a video from MSNBC talking about colleges. I haven't seen it, so hopefully it'll be interesting. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin K2 and vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is super important for being a cofactor for gene expression. D3 also helps to absorb calcium, and D3 will help to get cells to go into apoptosis, especially if they're infected. So stock up on D3, get it from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, D3 can help with the cardiovascular system and your bone density by doing resistance training and taking in calcium supplements. K2 will help to absorb that calcium better and help to build that bone matrix so you have denser bone. But in addition, by taking vitamin K2 and the D3 together, what that will do is help to pull out some of that calcium depositing around plaque formation and reduce calcium depositing. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the D3 and the K2 to help with your cardiovascular health and your bone density. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
At Marshall's, our buyers hustle 24/7, so you never have to compromise on quality or price. Who said expensive taste had to be that expensive? I'm impressed. That's not numbers. We get the deals, you get the good stuff.
Jim Van and I, we were just talking about your piece in Axios yesterday. I have to tell you, as the father of a new college student, it went into her inbox at about 6:30 yesterday morning, and I've heard many parents talking about this piece. It's a message to college students. In it, Jim writes, "What if I told you that politicians, the media, and your social media feeds are all chasing the exact same thing? Your attention. And all three get your attention to varying degrees by amplifying conflict and juicing your emotions, mainly your negative ones. Our brains are hardwired with what is called negativity bias, so we're all susceptible to eating this up. The result is that everything and everyone appears nastier, more outrageous, and more hopeless than they really are. Think about it. Your reality is shaped by what you see, hear, and read. So if your eyes, ears, and mind are lit up with doom and gloom, you assume darkness and conflict are everywhere." Jim, this is kind of a message you've been talking about for a long time, and you just summarized it so well in this piece. Everybody really ought to stop and read it, even if you're not a college student, to think about the way we consume media and the way we feel about our society right now. Say a little more about it, because it's something I tell my kids all the time. The world is a beautiful place, full of problems, yes, but it's not. What we read online and certainly see on social media is not representative of
Bullshit.
The truth generally.
Bullshit. Social media, mainstream media, is pushing ultra-liberal agendas. And those ultra-liberal agendas are eroding God, country, and family, which are the pillars for a productive and prosperous society. So you have to push back. No, everything's copacetic. No, ultra-liberals are wrong. Democratic socialism is wrong.
Right, I mean, you just had a wonderful, if depressing, segment, and what really brought it together is we have a crisis of hope. Like, there's a huge, huge problem that's bigger than this moment in politics, bigger than Trump, because it was happening under Biden. You have a country that's losing faith in its ability to make more money, to leave the country better off for their kids, to be able to fix any of the institutions that they feel are broken. You lose hope, you're really playing with fire. You don't have hope, you don't have that shared progress. You don't have hope, you don't have the American experiment in trying to do things together to make this place better. And my message to college kids is, like, you've got to give them.
Why do you think that the average college kid is losing hope? Why? Is it just negativity? Or is it that the job market really sucks for them when they get out? That the cost of living is too damn high? Why is this? Maybe it was these liberal policies of shipping jobs overseas. Maybe it was these liberal policies of having never-ending printing of money from the Federal Reserve. Maybe it's these liberal policies of having more debt issued. Maybe it's these policies where you have too many social programs that are not productive for the society. Maybe it's the policies of having a porous border and not being strong against illegal immigration. And then you wonder why these kids that are coming out of college or going into college are worried about their future? Because ultra liberals have fucked this country.
From the doom and gloom, there are some amazing fundamentals. Like, yes, like, history is up and down, and right now we're in a glut in terms of income, and there's like real issues, and I'm not diminishing that. But if you step back, whatever the world thinks about America, it truly is the best damn country around in terms of our natural resources, our talent, our innovation, the magic of capitalism. These things are as true today as they've ever been. And you as an individual, if you're sitting in college, you do control you. You control what you read. You control what you do. You don't like it? Fix it. You don't think you can fix it? Look at the last elections. Over the last 25 years, almost every couple of years, you end up having all Democratic control and all Republican control. Our elections are usually now determined by a few 100,000 people. That means that a lot of people have a lot more power with their individual vote than ever before. And so I tell my kids this, I tell other college kids this, like, it's just like spending time marinating in doom and gloom that does nothing. Like, you got one shot at life and you want to sit here, use that time on earth to figure out what are the small and big things that I can do to fix the stuff that's broken? And there are things that are broken, but you're dealing with some fundamental foundational assets that the rest of the world would kill to have.
No, these are, and that list right there was incredibly important advice, especially.
America rocks. It's your country. No, things have actually been a lot worse. You control you. You control your reality. Your living history.
I like this one.
Get in the damn game.
Yes.
And be grateful.
Yes, yes, yes. So now, actually, you can hold two truths. So, for something completely different, Anand, let's talk about your piece. Because I actually think they correlate, if I can. Do you agree?
I do.
Yeah.
They're in conversation with each other.
They're in conversation with each other. So we'll get back to Jen's piece.
Beautiful hair.
But s'mores and raids, go.
I was trying to just reflect on my own experience, the experience of many people I know this summer, living through this two-sided reality of the beauties and the joys of summer. I got little kids. It's a summer of s'mores. It's a summer of bonfires. It's a summer of kayak rides. It's a summer of, yes, you can have 2 scoops of ice cream just this once because it's summer. Who cares if dinner is spoiled? And at the same time, this drumbeat of raids and purging.
Univision is the #1 network for America's 65 million Hispanics. UEFA Champions League, Copa America.
Wait a minute.
Raids and purging.
Purges and raids. Well, this sounds like he's for illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is illegal.
And loyalty tests and firings and guttings and bringing universities to heel and the utter normalcy of life in an abnormal time. And I think it's trying to put to paper that two-sided reality, I think helped me understand why it is so hard, even now when so many people are so scared, so outraged for all the reasons we've talked about, why it's so hard for a real pro-democracy movement to coalesce. Because things feel normal, as Jim says, he's right, there are a lot of foundational assets in this country that are still the envy of the world. And so I think, looking back at history, looking back at Germany in the 30s, looking back at many historical examples, life felt normal to people.
Mm-hmm.
And life went on, even when it was not normal. And often the way we look back on those places is with much more clarity. And so you use the word sleepwalking when we're talking outside. There's a lot of sleepwalking happening. And I think we're all part of it. I'm part of it. I was enjoying summer as much as the next guy with my kids and their s'mores. And I think we're going to have to think about how do you hold the truths that Jim is talking about, that this country is bigger than Donald Trump and more beautiful than Donald Trump and has, I think, a future ahead of it that will be beyond Donald Trump. How do you hold all of that while being really clear about the utter danger of this authoritarian moment?
The thing is, the most important.
None of his statement there says that anything that Trump's doing is good. He basically is saying, we have lots of, positive things that are happening in the country that are not really the cause of Trump. And we have this authoritarian issue with Trump, but we're going to get past it. We're going to get past it. Everything will be fine. What it is that this is a representation. This is a representation of the ones that are stuck with the ultra-liberal movement. The ones that are stuck in this ultra-liberal movement, as the pendulum is swinging towards conservatism, they're going to have this knee-jerk reaction. One is that they want to fight it, and they're going to be very vocal about it. And then the next phase is that, this will pass once Trump leaves. This will pass, and everything will get better. Well, wait a minute. Why don't we take the assumption that maybe the ultra-liberal position is wrong for the country? This is a wine and cheese Democrat. Unbelievable.
Is that we balance. And I would say we balance these two articles. What did you say? They're in harmony with each other? They are in conversation with each other. Jim, it's important to remember as you're doom scrolling and you're seeing all of this awful news, it's important to remember that things have been worse. It's important to remember how chaotic 1968 was. If you don't believe it, watch Ken Burns' documentary on the Vietnam War and the cities burning, the civil rights unrest, what Black Americans went through until 1965 and continued to go through even after that. It's important to remember that murder rates are at a 50-year low, even though people still don't feel safe in cities. It's important to remember that wars across the globe are down. Civil wars across the globe are down. It's important to remember that global poverty is reaching new lows right now, and yet we have at our fingertips any negative news from across the planet that we can tap into and that we can scroll into. Does it mean we turn a blind eye to it? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Yeah. But it means, like a surgeon going in, trying to save somebody's life, that we all as a nation, trying to protect this democracy, don't lose our heads. And we understand that
what's the implicitness of this? Is he saying that he's the surgeon that has to surgically remove Trump? What is he saying? Is the democracy really about to fall? Well, maybe it is, but is it because of Trump? Or is it because of the erosion, because of liberal policies of God, country, and family? Maybe the issue is that you have cities that have very high crime that are run by Democrats. Maybe the issue is that DEI policies are not the right way forward to make the society productive. If things were so productive under a ultra-liberal agenda or even a liberal agenda, why is the economy faltering? The liberals have had control for a long time. Donald Trump is an outlier, but liberal policies for the country have dominated the last 35 years. Now people would say, well, what about the neocons after 9/11? There was a war footing, but the thing is that it's strange what's happening. Neocons, the neoconservatives, they're wrapped up also with the Democratic Party. There's an element of the Democratic Party that's actually a neocon. Like a Hillary Clinton is a classic example of it. So it's not just the Republican Party, but you had this big war effort for 20 years in the Middle East. We spent trillions of dollars and we didn't really get anything out of it. And then at home, on the domestic side, you had this liberal erosion, this liberal agenda erosion of the school system. And we're getting more and more in debt and become less and less efficient. We're shipping our jobs over because of the world trade. And don't be surprised that the society starts to falter. When you have wine and cheese Democrats demonizing religion, don't be surprised that the society starts being immoral. See, the problem with Joe and Mika is that Trump must be a bad guy. And that wine and cheese liberalism is the way the country should move forward. Most liberals don't know how to fix stuff. Most liberals don't know how to design stuff. Most liberals aren't productive.
Two equal truths at the same time. America has great challenges.
Yeah.
America has always had great challenges.
Yes.
But America is always moving toward being a more...
And to move forward and galvanize the ethos of Americana, it's about taking risks, exploration, and going towards the horizon and not giving up. It's I can. American is I can, not I can't. The problem is the wine and cheese Democrats, they want to be the echelon of society, make it less productive, and it's a bunch of people of I can'ts. And that's the problem. So the way to fix the nation is to get rid of this ultra-liberalism.
Union, there are people out there fighting even today. If you read the newspaper, if you see what judges are doing in decision after decision, and at the same time, those challenges.
Judges are fighting what? They're fighting against Trump. They're talking about how they want to maintain ultra-liberalism. They're not talking about how to make the country great. They're not talking about how they want, forget about it going conservative, just being middle ground. Just moving towards a middle ground. They want to maintain the wine and cheese, because that's where they've elevated up to a certain point in political power and social persuasion, and they don't want to lose it. But as this pendulum is moving towards conservatism, every day their viewership is going to reduce. Every day they're going to lose their ad revenue. And eventually what's going to happen is the wine and cheese Democrat is going to be flushed down the toilet.
Going to be able to be met if we teach our children.
How long before I see results with Tai Chi? Day 3, you'll feel your energy. Day 7, your eyes will change. Day 28, you will become unrecognizable.
3. If we teach our children,
You tuned out.
if we teach our children to not tune out, but not to be hypersensitive and tuned in a hypersensitive, catastrophic way, because you can't affect change if you're crouching under your desk in a fetal position.
Doesn't
I'll
this
leave
sound
you
like a
with that.
fun experiment for people who are skeptical about what I'm talking about the country?
This sounds like, according to Morning Joe, it seems like he wants a revolutionary. What are they fighting for? What exactly are they fighting? Oh, they're fighting against Trump. Totalitarianism. What about fighting for not having your job shipped overseas? What about fighting for making sure that your dollar isn't getting eroded because of wasteful spending by the government? Maybe we should be fighting for not having so much of AI infiltrating the job force. No, we got to fight Trump. We got to get more lawyers, more judges that are woke to make sure that we stop conservatism. That's what Morning Joe is saying implicitly. God.
I always try to reground myself. Think about the people you know in your life that you've met in the last year, last 2 years that you can make an appraisal of. And how many of those people do you consider normal, hardworking, generous? They volunteer, they give, they help,
Depends on
they
where you
carry
go.
groceries for an elderly neighbor. I guarantee you that every single person watching would say, that's probably 70, 80, 90% of the people that I meet. Those aren't the people you see on Twitter. They're not the people you see on shows like this sometimes, right? On cable. Like, we're here to talk about serious topics, and we're coming at it with a serious nature. But what restores the country, and this is what has always restored the country, it's those normal people. They figure out a way to rise up. I don't know what that mechanism is, but they do rise up. And then you get a different form of leadership, and not just leadership in politics. If you want to fix that hopelessness, you need better leadership in churches. You need better leaderships at home. You need better leadership in communities. You do need better leadership in government across the board. You need people who give a crap, who are thinking about the whole, and who are thinking about all the things that we talked about that work and don't work, and you try to make it a better place. Like, it's always going to be imperfect. We can always sit here and lament the imperfections, and there are many, many, many. But there's a hell of a lot of good. And I'd much rather live by that get in the damn game part of, like, I want to be part of that change. I want to think about that change. I want to encourage my kids to be part of change. I want kids in college to do the same.
Yeah, it's so important. We also teach our kids to get off the phone, read history. If you read American history, you will find out through American history, we've had one great challenge after another great challenge, and things have been worse. And so and
inspiring people got us through it.
And inspiring people got us through it. You look at Abraham Lincoln's life. You look at his public life from 1833 to 1865. The entire time he was fighting uphill against a recalcitrant, racist nation, and it wasn't just in the South. In Illinois, they had, while he was a state legislator there, they had a referendum on keeping black people out of their state. 70% voted to keep black people out of the state of Illinois. And Abraham Lincoln kept his head down. He kept moving back and forth. He would tack this way. He would tack that way. It was brutal. It was frustrating. But over 30 years, he finally achieved his goal, the emancipation of slaves. And then he was shot and he was killed. But we all stand on his shoulders today.
You know, Joe, I think you've just put your finger on one of the great failures of the last quarter century in this country.
But just remember, who wanted slavery? The South, the Democrats. Just let that sink in. And the wine and cheese Democrat wants you to support their cause. The wine and cheese Democrat wants to promote DEI. The wine and cheese Democrat wants to make sure that the government keeps on spending your money and you don't have a future. But they do. because they're in power. The party for slavery is the Democratic Party. Always has and always will be. But that whole slavery thing is still today. They still want blacks on the urban plantation, making sure they vote for Democrat. They want to have black people vote as a block. They still believe in slavery through illegal immigration and having cheap workers under the table. Did the Democrats ever elevate towards a higher, more moral system? No. No.
Our children the history of the United States of America. It's not one page in a history book, in a high school history book. It's not a couple of paragraphs. If you reread something like the Rick Atkinson trilogy on World War II, you come away stunned at what the United States of America meant to the world and still means to the world. It's amazing to read histories like this of who we are, the fiber, the spine of what it means to be an American. And that's
now, I think they're hitting on something they're hitting on something that's very important that I did see on campus. There is a group of people that are so disconnected from reality that they're not checking out. They're becoming anti-American. And they want to bring down those pillars of God, country, and family. They want to promote some sort of caliphate. They want to promote this extreme socialism and communism. They want to bring down the country. They want to destroy capitalism. So they're hitting on something that's really important here. And this is the reason why that second pillar is so important. Remember, I said God, country, and family. Country. All right? You get your kids focused on those three pillars, and you'll be fine.
Absolutely right. And it's time for a lot of people who are worried about the country, and with good reason, to just get up, move forward, one step after ahead,
Get inspired.
Just get up and go.
And it is important to remember, Willie, that as we talk about the Great War, as Studs Terkel called it, so we talk about defeating Nazis.
So you have this group that I saw that just hates America, and then you got this other group that I haven't seen but does exist in the United States, where there's just apathy, and it's just like a lull, right? But they've been coddled, and that they haven't been like, a liberal raising of these children have caused this problem, where they thought everything was just going to be given to them. There was this sense of entitlement. So when things are hard out there, they're not used to that, because mommy made sure that Johnny never fell off his bike. So you know what? These kids need to just grow up. Grow up. Move on. Stop being whiners.
And defeating Imperial Japan and creating a new world. We hold that truth. And it makes us proud.
When you have a vendor and a partner that operates with excellence, is really critical to how we grow.
And it makes us proud. And at the same time, it's okay to say there were black men, black young men that went over to fight that war. And they came back home to a nation that wouldn't even let them go to the same bathroom as the white soldiers they had fought with in the war. It's okay to say that. It's okay to embrace both of those truths and understand that, yes, Things have been worse. And yet we've continued to scratch and claw and fight and make our way toward a more perfect union. I want both those truths taught to our children when they go to the Smithsonian. I want both of those truths taught in Florida schoolrooms. I want both of those truths taught in colleges and universities across the nation. If anybody calls that woke, you know what? Go to Russia, because you're not an American. Nothing woke about talking about the greatness of America and the challenges that we face and what we need to do to become greater in the future.
And with that effort to eliminate some of that history that's currently underway, the Smithsonian and other places forgets is all the people who kept pushing forward in those dark times. Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, the list goes on and on. There were people of goodwill and good faith and moral courage who pushed this country forward. And that gets to the heart of your piece, which is there's a lot of bad stuff going on right now inside our government, especially that's eroding some of the things we've held sacred for a long time. But there are a lot of good people in this country too willing to push back.
I gave a commencement address a couple of years ago at my old high school and talked about the idea of you need to claim America as young people. And part of what's happening on campuses is that.
So what's happening in government? See, it's Trump's the government. See, they don't even say it, but that's what that's what they're meaning. There's a lot of bad stuff in government. Trump's government, as the pendulum of conservatism is starting to swing away from the crazy liberals.
And all these things have been taught to just deplore.
And just remember, it was the Republican Party that pushed for emancipation. It was the Republican Party that wanted more rights for the masses. All right. I mean, where the Republican Party went wrong was they allowed for the Democrats to take the narrative about civil liberties and civil rights. The Democratic Party is not about civil rights. It really isn't. They want people to be in ghettos and in blocks for voting.
And say it's kind of broken at the root, and I think that's a mistake. You can't fix something you don't claim. So you first have to claim it and then want to fix it. But I think Jim's giving a very important message of what we should tell young people. But thinking back to Ratner's segment, the best way to deliver this message to young people is to show it to them. Show them an economy that rewards their effort. When the ones who really bust their hump at the computer lab or whatever, reward them for their efforts. When you see so many people now, we have a post-human economy where AI stocks are soaring, but kids can't get a job, who are brilliant coming out of college. If you want young people to have hope and deal with that crisis of hope, Jim talked about the best way to do it is to show them that life has cause and effect, that their dreams come true when they take all the steps, that they're into the bar.
Right, but if he took advice, first he'd get a haircut, and secondly, what would happen is that you'd be focusing on God, country, and family, because there's ethics there. There's a foundation, there's a moral compass. There is a foundation to build from. But when you have willy-nilly with the whole DEI agenda and the transports and this idea that you can't disagree with individuals, and that if you disagree, then maybe you should be canceled and all this stuff, that's what the liberal agenda is pushing. But now they destroyed opportunity. But they want to spin it as it's Trump's fault. They want to spin it as, oh, it's the conservatives' fault. Really? He couldn't even, when he was saying, oh, they're working hard in the computer lab. Wait a minute here. Why not mechanical engineering? What about chemical engineering? See, what I'm noticing with these ultra libs and the wine and cheese Democrat, they don't understand. They don't understand how things are built. They don't understand physics. They don't understand engineering. They don't understand manufacturing. Party of the blue collar, party of the doer. They're saying you got to do, but the example he has is a computer lab. If you have a kid, the worst thing you can have them do, you know, if they're going into college now, is to be in computer science, because that is going to be totally revolutionized by AI. So why would you need a snot-nosed stupid shit that's coming out of college? If you have a company, are you going to hire them, or are you going to hire experienced coders and just a lot fewer of them while they're using AI? Why would you hire someone that's young? They don't have any experience. Oh, they came from a good school. So what? They don't have any experience. So why would you do that? Even the wine and cheese Democrat doesn't even understand it's about engineering, not coding. It's about making things in the real world. The wine and cheese Democrats, they suck.
To achieve those dreams.
Greetings. I'm Geert Artis, Axios co-founder and CEO Jim Vandehei. Thank you both for this amazing conversation.
Meanwhile, you still have a bunch of kids that are pushing DEI. Okay. Let's listen to Mr. Wonderful from Fox News. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals, help to boost up your mitochondria. You're going to have more ATP. You're going to have less stress in your cells and in your tissues. It's going to soak up free radicals at the cellular level, at the vascular level, even at the neural level. And when you do that, you're improving your immune system, your endocrine system, even your brain function. So please go to my store and get the C60. You take a teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach for best absorption. If you work out, take it before your workout so that you're soaking up the free radicals that you're generating during the workout, and you will notice that you're recovering quicker. Also, you can get it in extra virgin olive oil and avocado oil, but take a teaspoon a day, every day. I've been taking C60 since 2016. Take it every day. It's the second pillar of my core protocol. The foundation, the multivitamin and probiotic. The first pillar, the cleanse and the max 35. The second pillar, C60. The third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans that will help to boost up that immune system. And the fourth pillar, boomer boost. Boost up those energy levels and rev up your metabolism. And what you'll notice when you take that protocol is you're going to slow down the aging process. You're improving your endocrine system. You're improving your immune system. You're thinking better. You have more cognition. And you have more vitality. So please go to my store and get the C60. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper to purchase the higher ounce configuration. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
With moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, my skin was no longer mine.
My active psoriatic arthritis joint symptoms held me back. Don't have symptoms.
Wall Street Journal is arguing that young adults don't need an Ivy League degree to be successful in life. Here's the writing. Panicky parents often think their children's success in life depends on going to a prestigious school. In reality, there are many paths to achieving great things. Kevin O'Leary with us this morning. Hi, Kevin. Has the value of an Ivy League education come down?
No, it hasn't. It's not really about. Listen, I got to tell you something, Stuart. I have to preface this before I start. I'm an executive fellow at Harvard. I teach there. But I tell the students something I think the other profs don't like to hear. It's not about what I'm telling you now. It's not about the cases you're reading 20 years from now. It's about the people you're sitting beside. This incredible cohort, this international cohort, these people are extraordinary individuals that have been chosen to take this journey with you for 2 years. You will forget about me, but you will not forget about the people you went through this journey with. They will become your network. They're invaluable to you. And that is the truth. Now, look, it's tough love to hear that, but that is what it's all about in an Ivy League school, the cohort. And I think that's the key. We have to protect it because we take these people from all around the world. We give them this remarkable experience in this culture of education, learning about the American economy and democracy, and then we send them off to the world, and they're like a beacon out there And they all know each other. They become leaders, business leaders, political leaders, tech leaders. That's the key.
So move heaven and earth to get your kid in. Next case, Gen Z employees. They're ditching this career ladder. That's the linear path to success, straight up. Rather than choosing to adopt they choose to adopt the career lily pad. That's the jump from one opportunity to another. What do you think's best, straight up or jump around?
It depends.
I think you can jump around, but what I've learned in terms of processing people and employing them and motivating them is if I see a resume with less than 24-month commitment to any one project, into the garbage, I put it. Because that person doesn't understand you have to stick around for a while to work within a team and prove that you can hit objectives. That's the key. Every 2 years, if you want to make a move, I get it, and I take those people, I put them in the pile I'm interested in. And I care about this a lot. I just hired a new CEO for just hours ago, and we're doing our first call today after almost a 6-month search. I like this person. I like what I saw. And he's going to be running my watch insurance business. You know I love watches, Stuart. I'm going to shoot these watches with it. But my whole point is this guy came out of a behemoth tech company with a proven track record of excellence and never went anywhere for less than 2 years.
And now he's running. You had to get the watches in, didn't you? You do that every time you get on the show. Your guy shows the watches.
Absolutely. By the way, these are two unique pieces. They're Tudor. One is made of ceramic and the other carbon, brand new, and it glows blue. I look spectacular, Stuart. I look so good. Trump's going to put a tariff on.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. It's going to help your vascular system, your heart, your brain function, musculature, energy levels, and revs up your metabolism. Your cellular metabolism. By taking this regularly, you're going to slow down the aging process. You're also going to be bringing down inflammation. You're going to be able to sleep better. You're going to consolidate your memory better and get rid of that brain fog. It's a powerful supplement. Take it every day. It's a great way also through calorie restriction in taking this. You're going to have your energy levels and lose weight. So if you want to lose weight, you take this for your breakfast or for your lunch, mix it with soft foods like hummus or applesauce, yogurt. That would be your meal. And then restrict your calories for your other meals, all right, up to a point, up to a certain level, depending on your BMI. And then you want to lose weight at approximately on average about 2 pounds per week. And then once you get to your target weight, then you have a balanced diet to maintain that weight, all right? Now, if you are already at your target weight, you take this with just soft foods or filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk, and you just take it as a supplement, all right? But this can also help you to lose weight because it's going to give you this long burn of energy, no spiking. It'll rev up your metabolism. So if you do calorie restriction and take this, you won't have that low energy level. This will maintain that energy level. And it's a great way to lose weight safely, all right? That's the whole key, is that you don't want to lose weight too fast because that will lead to a yo-yo diet. And it's also about changing your lifestyle and improving your nutritional levels. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Boomer Boost. If you're an athlete, this is great for pre or post-workout fueling. So there's 3 ways that you can apply this. 1, use it as an anti-aging and get healthy, and you're at your target weight. You can use this if you want to lose weight. Or if you're an athlete, you can use this as your pre or post-workout fuel source. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and use the Boomer Boost. I take it every day, all right? I mix it with my hummus, and I add a bunch of other powders like the Gladiator barley and the lignans and the collagen and, the probiotic, right? But I take it every day, and obviously I don't need to lose weight. But if you do want to lose weight by taking Boomer Boost, it's about levels of calorie restriction moderately, eating better, and replacing your breakfast or your lunch with the Boomer Boost, all right? And mixing it with the soft food, like hummus or yogurt or whatever. Now, heirloom barley is a high-density protein powder that you can mix it with the Boomer Boost. And what this will do, you can take it separately, but what this will do is bring down inflammation. So that's good for your immune system, that's good for your cardiovascular system, that's good for your joint health, that's good for your cerebral system. So reducing inflammation helps with neural health. This will soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase and detoxify your body. When you're detoxifying your body, you're helping your immune system, you're helping your endocrine system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. And remember, by detoxifying your body, you're helping your liver, you're helping your kidneys. So you get many benefits by just taking the heirloom barley. But again, you can mix the Boomer Boost with the heirloom barley or the Gladiator barley. And that will also help to control your A1C levels. So let's say you're pre-diabetic or even diabetic, all right? Well, do you want to continue taking diabetic medication? You want to continue taking insulin? Well, many people can reverse it by changing their diet, losing some weight, and taking the proper supplementation to control your A1C levels. Well, that's what Boomer Boost does. So especially if you mix it with the heirloom barley or the Gladiator barley and do some resistance training, because when you do that, you're becoming less insulin resistant. So please go to my store, pay attention to what I have to say, because you can get healthy. You can reverse many of the diseases that are happening in the United States. What are some of the three common ones that are really based on environmental factors and lifestyle choices? Heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, right? You can, by changing your lifestyle, you're reducing the chances. By doing the proper screenings and catching the problem early and addressing it, you don't have to go down pharmacopoeia, all right? You don't have to be so focused on the pharmaceuticals. You can be focused on having a more healthy life. Now, that's proper diet, proper exercise, sleeping, getting the proper sleep, mindfulness, learning new things, doing resistance training and cardiovascular training, balancing exercises and stretching exercises. That's not just for your muscles. That's also for your neurons and activating the cerebellum. You want to not have Parkinsonian problems when you're in your geriatrics? Better start stretching and doing balancing exercises. So if you look at this from a holistic point of view, you'll actually get healthier and slow down the aging process and reduce your need for certain therapeutics, certain pharmaceuticals, if not totally eliminate it. If you pay attention to what I had to say on this broadcast, you can easily control your lipid profile. Do you know how many people are on statins in the United States? A lot. Millions, tens of millions. And most of the people, not all, but most of them, it's because of lifestyle choices. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. And by taking the supplements and approaching it in a holistic fashion, and you stack it the way I just told you to, you are going to get healthy, and you're going to have more longevity, more vitality, and you're going to notice that you're aging slower. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.